Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Soul Chess in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 81, Lelich vs Talbumasuk, The Retreat. Third person POV. Kaso Kabushi. Tatsuki rushed towards Arisa, who met her head-on with her own use of the move. Arisa then swept down low and tripped Tatsuki, knocking her off her feet before slamming her in the solar plexus with her fist, bashing Tatsuki away. The teen gained aerial control and reached a three-point landing with her right arm and then dashed forward, flapping her wings and charged a ball of energy, creating a small fireball and launched it forward. Arisa created a fireball twice the size of Tatsuki's just by holding her hand out in front of her and pitched it like a ball rather than launching it like a Kido blast. It was also very circular, in contrast to Tatsuki's flaming missile-like projectile. The attack overtook Tatsuki's fireball and she dodge-rolled to the side only to be met with Arisa's foot slamming into her back. Tatsuki went tumbling along the ground and stood up in pain, clutching her arm. You must transcend your humanity, cast aside your living shell and accept your spiritual power. Like the Quincy and like your friend, Sato, you must transcend your limitations, Arisa spoke as she levitated in place. Figuring out how to do that is why we are fighting. Tatsuki growled and lit herself up. Kane Ryu. She tore towards Arisa like an arrow and then cancelled the attack as she drew near. Raisin Furia. She performed the hooking uppercut into Arisa's jaw and charged her fist with extra energy as she stood over Arisa. Shoki Yasi. Impact Palm. Tatsuki hammered the ground with her flaming fist, but missed Arisa as she rolled away. You're not getting away. Kyoyoba. She performed a roundhouse kick and slammed Arisa in the back of the neck as the other persona recovered up from the ground, knocking her down. Kaso Kajo. Tatsuki slammed the energy of her fist into the ground at Arisa, who dodged further out of the way and flew towards Tatsuki, grabbed her by the chest and threw her. Tatsuki impacted with the ground, realizing she didn't like the taste of mentally conjured up dirt. Remember, Tatsuki, your objective is to overcome Kaibun by overcoming me. You are at the disadvantage with weaker skill. Think, why are you not being annihilated? Arisa hinted. A chord struck with Tatsuki. She's got a point. If she has all of Kaibun's powers she could have me flattened in seconds, but she's fighting defensively, just like Sensei and Yoriyuki-san. There's something I have to learn, but what? She said something about overcoming her. Maybe if I continue to fight she might give me hints. Tatsuki took to the air and struck. Kaso Kabushi. Arisa dodged back via flight. She used the double-sized, circular fireball on Tatsuki. Kane Ryu. Tatsuki tore towards Arisa with her flaming body, tearing through the fireball. She cancelled out of the attack again as she had before. Raisin Furia. She uppercut and knocked Arisa up and over her. Jigokyo Abar. Tatsuki created a flaming inferno around her and Arisa, setting her counterpart on fire, but like a phoenix from the ashes, Arisa regenerated. She then socked Tatsuki in her abdomen and then kicked her between her breasts into the ground and landed on it. Tatsuki got up, panting. Her right arm hurt as she had landed on her elbow badly. Do you understand it yet? Arisa asked. You and I are one in the same. You must transcend your humanity. You are the queen of this world. Tatsuki realized Kaibun was giving her hints. She didn't quite understand what Arisa was trying to say though, so she kept fighting. She leapt high into the air. Ryasei Tsuka. She angled her flaming legs down towards Arisa. Arisa, without declaring the technique, used Netsuha, impeding Tatsuki's progress with the intense heat. Tatsuki retreated to the ground, sweating. That's weird. That's the first time she actively stopped me. No, wait, she did the same thing when I attacked with Kaso Kabushi. Tatsuki replayed all of her actions in her head. Getting it yet? Arisa asked. I'll know in a second, Tatsuki declared. Kane Ryu. Tatsuki tore towards Arisa once again. This time she did not cancel out of it and instead of tearing through Arisa she lodged herself inside her counterpart's body. Arisa dropped to the ground as she and Tatsuki merged. We must become one, so I'll assimilate you. Well done, Arisa wheezed as she allowed Tatsuki to dominate their fused being. The only way to overcome Kaibun is to increase your power and accept me as a part of you. We are one, but were separated. Joined again you can become master of your own being. Back in the real world, Urayu and Chad were at their limits. Urayu quickly realized that the more damage Kaibun received, the stronger and faster she became, and that had been their undoing. They had managed a few nicks and dings on Tatsuki's body, and it only served to empower their foe. Urayu was bleeding from his forehead, his left arm burned. Chad's left arm was singed like a piece of steak. Braza's Cuerda del Diablo was barely holding together. His right arm had the base end by his elbow broken off. Kaibun stood in front of them as energized as ever, with her right hand held up by her ear, finger pointing up, palm facing Urayu and Chad. Her left hand was down by her leg, palm facing out and fingers pointing down. Both hands had flames charged within them. Well, Ishida, human, it's been fun, but this is the end for both of you. Farewell. Kaibun prepared to start the process for a finishing move. Damn, what do we do? If we overdo it we might hurt Arisawa. Without Inu-san to revive her we might kill her if we're not careful. But if we do nothing it'll be our lives taken out. Forgive me, Arisawa. Urayu drew back on his bow. Lick-tree. Urayu stopped his declaration as Kaibun's fire doused almost on the spot and her eye-slit became even thinner. She seemed to be panicking. No, that's impossible. Kaibun put a hand up by her face. No. Stay away. I'm in control now. She began backing away, her free arm lashing out violently. Ishida? What's happening? Chad asked him. I don't know, but perhaps, this is Arisawa's doing, Urayu theorized. Leave my friends alone. Tatsuki shouted at Kaibun from within her own head. This is my body and I won't let you have it. No. Nuoayayag. Kaibun began to glow as her body began to crack and light shone through from different portions of her body. Grr. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. Kaibun declared. Arisawa. There was a violent burst of orange energy. Urayu and Chad shielded their eyes. The explosion tore up the ground, trees, and telephone lines nearby. In the vast darkness of Tissan's Bankai, Grimjo felt like a beast being hunted for its coat. He had to fight without any sense of direction or sight, and his heightened hearing wasn't helping all that much either. Thankfully for him, his sense of touch was still active. Grimjo knew how to fight with his senses dulled or non-existent, so this wasn't as difficult for him as it was for Kenpeki. He had managed to graze Tissan 3 times, but was starting to find this game of cat and mouse, where he was the mouse, very, very tedious. Man, if only I could blast this thing to high hell, then maybe. Grimjo got an idea in his head and grinned. Tissan came striking in towards him. Grimjo dodged as he drew near and kicked Tissan away, then with the limited time he had, put his plan into motion. With his left index nail he cut open his right palm and aimed at the sky. There's gotta be some sort of roof to this thing, he said as he charged his Gran Ray Zero, though unable to see it. Gran Ray Zero. Powered by his resurrection, Grimjo fired at the ceiling of Tissan's Bankai, cracking it. Grimjo saw light for a moment before the space closed up. Interesting, so there's a ceiling, and where there's a ceiling, there's obviously a floor too. Grimjo punched his way right through the floor of Tissan's Bankai and then fired a Zero to blast it wide open and escape out of Tissan's space. Tissan, realizing Grimjo had escaped, disabled his Bankai and followed after the feline espada. His blade clashed against Grimjo's arm. You are truly a beast, Grimjo, Tissan told him. You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like the whimpering whining of a dog who just had his trump card pulverized. Don't even bother using it again, I'll just blast a hole in it like I did before, Grimjo smirked. Tissan scowled and hacked forward, slashing Grimjo in the arm. It's not like I need my Bankai to deal with the likes of you. We shall settle this the old-fashioned way, Grimjo. Although your strength has increased since we last saw each other, I will not allow a beast like you to continue to go on. Your path of destruction ends here. Selectively oblivious to the goings-on between Tissan and Grimjo, Ichigo sensed the earlier explosion from far away and felt Tatsuki's Ryotsu disappear from the area. Tatsuki? He couldn't sense her, only faint traces. No, that can't be. Tatsuki! Ichigo shouted to the sky, but there was of course no response. No, it can't be true. Ichigo's eyes welled up with tears. He sensed Apache come in and he bashed her away with his sword. Damn it! His face was reflected with a heavy heart and emotional trauma. Tatsuki, this can't be happening. You were my best friend. Ichigo shed a tear from his eye. Ichigo completely lost focus and stopped pursuing his enemies to mourn the loss of Tatsuki. Apache, Sun, and Mila Rose noticed this and took advantage of it. They surrounded Ichigo from 3 different angles and attacked him with their Zeros. It looked like Ichigo's sorrow was so bad that he seemed like he might get hit with all 3 Zeros without putting up a defense. However, as the Zeros drew near, a presence made itself known right next to his right arm. Yogan Rensha. Lava burst. An orange fiery field of energy burst outwards around Ichigo and stopped the Zeros before pushing away and knocking Mila Rose, Apache, and Sun away. Ichigo opened his eyes and gaped at the figure before him. It was a girl wearing a skin-tight, ashen gray outfit wearing crimson fingerless gloves on her hands with flaming wings shooting out of her back, draconic in shape, and a fiery tail, matching the theme of the wings also extending out from the girl. Ichigo could just barely make out the raven head of hair on the other side of the flaming wings. Tatsuki, you're okay. Ichigo was elated to see his long-life friend virtually unharmed. Tatsuki looked over her shoulder and karate chopped Ichigo's forehead. Of course I'm okay, who do you think I am? Tatsuki wagged her finger at him. But I thought, Ichigo rubbed his eyes. I just went through a metamorphosis. Tatsuki indicated her new form. I call it Kataki no Ryu, Kaijin Hata. Form of the dragon, ashen skin. Now, Tatsuki turned her attention to Hallible's fraction. What say we kick it to these hags old school like old times? You and me, Ichigo, just the 2 of us, like it's always been. Tatsuki turned back to Ichigo and extended her hand to her friend. The 2 did their secret handshake. Yeah, let's do this. Ichigo declared, and he and Tatsuki prepared to fight Hallible's fraction together. Ichigo charged from his position and tore towards Mila Rose with unrelenting fury. With a Getsuga imbued slash he injured her pretty badly. Apache came in to try and flank him, but Tatsuki was right there to fend her off. Kyoyoba. With a fearsome kick, Tatsuki sent Apache straight into a lamp post. A Zero came at the pair from behind from Sun. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo fired his attack straight through the Fraction's Zero. Kane Ryu. Tatsuki tore towards her target. Ranson Furia. Tatsuki uppercut Sun in the jaw with her left arm. Shoryuken. Tatsuki used the technique with her right arm and knocked Sun higher into the air. Koton Nan. Tatsuki burned away Sun with her fire. The attack lit the Aaron car on fire, leaving Sun within an inch of her life. I have mercy. Tatsuki told herself. Her temper and power were hers to control. Kaibun would never again force her to commit murder when she had no desire to do so. Apache came charging back towards Ichigo to attack him, but the teen cut her down as she drew near. Tatsuki appeared right above her as Apache recoiled from being slashed. Ryasei Tsuka. She stomped on Apache's antlers, broke them and sent the Fraction slamming into the ground. Mila Rose came in to attack the dynamic duo, but Tatsuki was prepared. Ichigo, cover your ears. Ichigo did so and Tatsuki let out a sonic scream that paralyzed Mila Rose and sent her flying back. Ichigo took the opportunity to go after the reeling Aaron car and finished her ability to fight with a Getsuga Tensho to the opposite shoulder of the side of her body he had already cut. Seconds later he and Tatsuki high-fived. Teamwork! Ichigo exclaimed. Ah, that was so refreshing. We haven't fought side by side in a long time. Tatsuki flexed her right arm and gripped her bicep. Yeah, and what say we continue this by going after Talbumasuke? Ichigo asked her. Tatsuki shook her head. No, you go by yourself. She told Ichigo. Huh? Ichigo was confused. To be perfectly honest, I'm in pretty awful shape from earlier. Here, Tatsuki grabbed both of Ichigo's hands in hers and a glowing, sparkling orange sphere encircled both of them. Ichigo did not feel stiff, sore, hurt or tired. Hey, I feel loads better. What was that? He asked as he looked down at his hand as he flexed his fingers. Tatsuki, however, appeared to be rather exhausted and spoke as she held her arms around herself. That was my technique Iyashino-en, healing flame. By burning away my own Ryotsu as a catalyst, and a lot of it, I can restore a single ally to full strength, both Ryotsu and wounds. It leaves me pretty vulnerable, but I'm so exhausted already I figured I can use what I have left to keep an eye on Orium, just in case. Tatsuki stated. You didn't have to do that, I can repair my spirit energy on my own, Ichigo told her. Yes, but I also healed your wounds and any muscle sores you may have had from the prolonged fight. You might be able to keep up your stamina, but you should feel like you just woke up from a good night's rest followed by some morning exercise right about now, Tatsuki told him. Well, thanks, I'm glad I have a friend like you at my back, Tatsuki. Ichigo gripped his blade tightly. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some choice words for the guy responsible for all of this. Ichigo began to head off, but Tatsuki grabbed his sleeve. Ichigo, wait. What is it? I have to go and help, can't this wait? Ichigo asked Tatsuki. No, I mean, I don't want forget as long as I'm thinking about it, Tatsuki said. Alright, Ichigo turned to look at Tatsuki, what is it? Well you see, I know this is wrong of me, you have enough to worry about without me throwing this onto your shoulders. You still don't, but... Just tell me, Ichigo encouraged, anxious. Tatsuki sighed and gave Ichigo a look of sorrow, it's about you and Orium. I know what I said, about how I want you two to be happy together and really, I do, but, I still like you. Tatsuki wrapped her arms around herself and gripped her shoulders. I've known you almost my whole life and, I feel now that I've sort of given you up of my own free will. I know I did it on purpose, but instead of feeling happy for you, in truth I feel jealous and that's not fair to you or Orium. I gave her all the encouragement a best friend should, helped her along, but in truth, I think somewhere inside me I wanted her to fail so that I could have you to myself. Damn it. Why do you have to make me feel this way? Tatsuki felt her jaw grow heavy. Damn it, I'm crying now aren't I? She asked as tears formed in her eyes. She squeezed them shut. Shit. This is why I hate being a girl. This would be so much easier if I was a guy, I wouldn't feel like this, you and I would just be a couple of close friends like you and Sato. I hate being a girl, I try my best to act all tough, but you, Tatsuki hyperventilated, strip away my every barrier and tough act. I always wind up needing your help, giving you crap and acting like I'm just another one of your regular friends that you would have if you weren't a punk. Tatsuki wiped her eye, but I'm not like that am I? I'm a weak vulnerable girl, damn stereotypes. Tatsuki was interrupted when Ichigo wrapped his arms around her letting his left hand clasp over his right wrist down at Tatsuki's waist. That's enough Tatsuki, he said calmly. You're not weak or vulnerable. I don't ever want to hear you say that again. You're the strongest and most willful teenage girl I know. I couldn't ask for a better lifelong friend. It's okay that you feel this way. It's not wrong. I've thought about it myself. Orium even brought it up on her own accord, and I held her just as I'm holding you now. I care about both of you, a lot. There's no reason for you to cry though, you're stronger than that Tatsuki. I know you are. So I never want to hear any of that negative stuff again alright. Ichigo told her and let go of her and looked her in the eye. Yeah, Tatsuki sniffed, thanks. Ichigo looked over to where the battle against Talbumasuk was raging. I do agree about one thing you said though, it wasn't fair to me for you to dump that on my shoulders. And I'm not saying that to be mean, I'm saying that because this is something you and Orium should work out. My position will remain the same regardless of what you feel. Still, I'm glad you told me because the last thing I want to do, Ichigo turned his head back towards Tatsuki and smirked, is lose the longest, and first, friend I've ever had. Ichigo scratched his head. I think Orium came up with a solution actually. What did she call it? Seidoshu, S.A., Saishout, Ichigo shook his head violently, I can't remember what she called it. Ask her when you get the chance. Ichigo said and took off. Of course, if Ichigo had bothered to look up the term Orium had mentioned to him, Saishoutuken, he would have never brought it up to Tatsuki, nor would he have ever thought of it as potential solution. Although he and Orium were romantically involved, there were still areas of the adult world that still made Ichigo's face turn redder than a ladybug's back. Seeing her, Fraxion defeated Hannibal became filled with rage. As Ishine fired another Getsuga Tensho, she hacked it away violently and zipped open her jacket. Ishine didn't know what his opponent was up to. Destroy, Tiburon. Hannibal wrapped herself up in water and slashed her way out of it. She then tore towards Ishine with immense speed to slash him up. Ishine barely had a chance to get out of the way as she went by. So, finally getting serious, are we? Well, I guess I will too. Bankai. Ishine's glowing, normal-looking Zanpakuto grew out and became twice the size of his son's Shikai. The blade was shaped oddly, like a gigantic trapezoid. It was bladed along the tip and along the lower edge. The blade was made completely of energy and the same color as the Getsuga Tensho. The guard was shaped like a cloud in a fluffy pattern of one covered the upper portion of the hilt, which was now golden in color. Tenku Bunkatsu Injetsu. Sky-splitting scathing moon. What is it with men and gigantic weapons? Hannibal tore towards Ishine with her pata and attacked, but Ishine blocked her strike, reducing her momentum completely as he held his sword at a 45-degree angle. He turned his blade and swung down on it with both hands. Getsuga Tensho. As the blue blast of energy raged across the sky, it was seen by Stark and Yoriyuki from their location. Looks like everyone else is getting pretty serious, Yoriyuki commented. Seems that way, Stark said. Aren't you going to do the same? Yoriyuki asked. I'd rather not really, Stark said, although, he looked in Ishine's, Kaien's, Hisona's, Hichugaya's, Urahara's, and Byakuya's directions one by one, are all Bankais that powerful. Most of them. They're the secret weapons of the Soul Reapers after all and the trump cards of all captains, Yoriyuki told him. Does that mean you have Bankai too? Stark asked. You are captain class, aren't you? Ah, what gave it away? Yoriyuki grinned, still acting playful. If I use my release form, will you use your Bankai, Shiho and Yoriyuki? Stark asked. Maybe, Yoriyuki smirked. Lilynet. Stark called. You don't have to yell, Lilynet stated and appeared next to Stark. Why did you call her over? Yoriyuki asked. The two of us used to be one being, Stark said. Most Arrancar split themselves into their Zanpakuto and their bodies. We split into two bodies. Combined our true power awakens. Kick about, Los Lobos. A raging blue wind swirled about Stark as he unleashed his resurrection. Yoriyuki felt the tension in the air increase and grinned. Seems like things are about to get interesting. She extended her arm out. She reached into her cleavage and whipped out her Zanpakuto. Let's see what he's got. Stark emerged in his release form, his coyote furs and handguns fully visible. Are you ready? Stark asked. He took aim at Yoriyuki and fired a Zero from his gun. Yoriyuki dodged it. Heh, looks like things are finally getting interesting, she charged forward towards Stark. He fired his right gun at her a sequential amount of times. Yoriyuki dodged each strike, but when she got close to Stark he disappeared through use of Sonido and fired his Zero at her. He shot right through her, but in a flash Yoriyuki's orange jacket was left behind and Stark saw her leg coming in before it kicked him in the face. Come on, you can do better than that, she told Stark. Don't feel bad though, I am the goddess of Flash after all. Stark scowled and fired more balls at her from his gun. Yoriyuki dodged each one with a burst of Shunpo. Stark used Sonido and attacked with a powerful shot from his gun at her. Yoriyuki barely had time to make it out of the way the area covered was so immense. She took a moment to catch her breath. See, that's the spirit. So have you finally decided to go all out? To a degree, you made me do this pain in the ass release. Where's your Bankai? He asked Yoriyuki. My Bankai, do you really think I'd use something that draining without exhausting other options first? Yoriyuki asked. So iPhone. From behind the Karakura High Class 1-3 teacher came at Stark from behind, Shikai already released. Stark turned and fired at So iPhone. She slid underneath the attack and took aim at his ankle as she came on by, but Stark dodged out of the way. 2 against 1 is hardly fair, you know, he said to the duo as Soifone formed up along her mentor. Hey, you're the one who fused with your partner. It is definitely fair, Yuruki folded her arms. Humph, I suppose, but, Starkey aimed with his gun, your advantage seems to be your speed, and unless I'm mistaken those sleeveless uniforms are in accordance with the stealth force, the captain variety. Oh, he's good, Yuruki spoke softly. If that's the case, I have a perfect countermeasure. A flash of energy enclosed itself in Starkey's gun, covering the hole inside of the barrel and part of the outside of it. Zero Metrolita. Starkey pulled the trigger and instantly about 500 zeros came shooting out. Oh damn, Yuruki commented calmly. The battle instantly became a game of tag as Starkey continued to shoot with rapidity so swift that even the famed goddess of Flash found it hard to make any progress even with her slim body and muscular legs. The same could be said for Soifone, who was having considerably less ease dodging and making progress on Starkey at the same time because the closer they drew to the Primera the more concentrated and faster the shots became. Yuruki tried to escape from above, but Starkey used his other gun to fire a massive zero at her. Whoa! Yuruki bent over backwards into a somersault. She managed to remain free and Starkey, still keeping one gun trained on Soifone while the other firing rapidly at Yuruki, was making things difficult for both women. Heh, no wonder he's the Primera. Yuruki thought to herself. As she continued to dodge, Soifone realized she wouldn't be able to keep this up for much longer. She and Yuruki needed a plan that wasn't dodge till they dropped. After a few more seconds of dodging she believed she had won. Hey! She shouted at Starkey. I bet even with both guns trained on Yuruki-sama you couldn't even hit her once. Is that a taunt? Because I'm not going to fall for it, Starkey responded. If I take aim at her with both weapons, then that leaves me open to you. That was a good try Soifone, Yuruki thought as she dodged, but this guy is too clever to fall for taunts. He's very focused. Now I understand why Lelouch and Kisuk had trouble with such an individual. Once he gets serious, he really gets serious. I guess I have no choice. Yuruki vanished from the scene. Starkey kept trying to pick her out, but Yuruki had gone outside his sight range. She held up her Zanpakuto. It's been a long time since I used this, but it's probably the best choice I have right now. Shred, Yuruki used a flash step and got right behind Starkey, Shinsei Utora. Sacred Tiger, her Zanpakuto glowed and became a 3-clawed golden gauntlet along her arm. Starkey took aim, and fired, but with a slash of her claws the subsequent shot seemed to be fired into a tear in space. In the next instant, Yuruki planted her bare foot into Starkey's cheek as the rest of her Shikai's appearance took hold. While in Shikai, to further increase her speed, Yuruki's Shiakusho fit snugly to her body, almost giving the look as if she was wearing nothing at all and that her uniform was practically painted on her body with the way it was tugging at her. She also wore nothing on her feet except for the hem of her pants, which hugged snugly to the solace of her feet. Starkey opened fire on Yuruki, but with a larger slash she opened a larger portal and dove inside it only to appear right behind Starkey as another portal opened right behind him, and as he turned she slashed his arm with her claw, cutting through 5 layers of skin. If not for Starkey's arrow she would have cut down to the bone. Soifone was standing off to the sides watching in ecstasy. She and Yuruki never used their Zanpakuto to train. It had been such a long time since she had ever seen Yuruki's Shikai. She had only ever seen her use it once in her entire lifetime and the school teacher was captivated. She'd go and help, but Yuruki seemed like she had the situation under control. Byakuya and Ulquiorra both noticed it when Starkey released his full power. So now even the Primera himself releases his resurrection, does he? Ulquiorra thought to himself. This battle has truly reached its pinnacle of power. Byakuya also noticed that Yuruki had released her Zanpakuto. Is her enemy really that strong, or did she just get impatient? Why am I worried about her anyway? Across the battlefield, on the western side of the town, Hisuna was finding herself extremely pressured. Ciela had managed to survive her Symphony of Shadows using an army of small, glowing green worker bees, and now the two were fighting up close, much to Hisuna's disgust. She didn't like bugs, and without being on the ground she couldn't use Sode Jokioku, and she didn't have the timing to use Sika no Hikari. She thought about using Fukitsune Gakuten, but she felt it would be a bit much, especially with her opponent keeping on her like this. Not to mention everyone else seems to be having a rough time too, Hisuna thought to herself. I guess I'll have to use that technique. Never thought I'd find a really good use for it. First I need to hold my own enemy in place. She and Ciela clashed for a few more exchanges before Hisuna managed to get behind Ciela. Bakudo 61, Rikiryu Koro. Bakudo 63, Seijo Sabaku. She bound Ciela with both Kido and then began to chant. Ha 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 ha. She sung out. Ha 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 ha. As Hisuna sang her heart out, Talbumasuke was still doing battle with Yamamoto and Urahara. Even with Zenko no Sozo and some of his other techniques, he was still struggling to inflict any amount of damage on the shopkeeper and the head captain. He'd managed to deliver a few nasty blows to the head captain, but anything he used on Urahara always turned out to be against a portable Jigai. Talbumasuke was beginning to wonder just how many of things Urahara had brought with him. The Arrancar Lord currently was without his left sleeve, the skin scathed in several places. He was bleeding from the right side of his forehead and Urahara had managed to slash him along the middle of his torso as well. His coat was in shambles and his hair was starting to flop down over his eyes from all of the sweat. There's only one way he could escape me, so why doesn't he use it? What's he waiting for? Recharge period or not, he should be able to use it by now. Urahara thought to himself. As Talbumasuke stared down Urahara and Yamamoto and they stared back, they began to hear what sounded like rock music. It went to a 5-3-2 tempo and was slowly becoming louder. Talbumasuke watched as an orange light surrounded Yamamoto and Urahara as their Ryotsu began to steadily increase. Music? That means, oh hell no. Talbumasuke recognized the sound for what it was. He quickly switched to a red aura and stopped Urahara and Yamamoto in their tracks. Urahara saw it coming and converged the mist as best he could to guard himself, but Urahara was not his target. Talbumasuke dove underneath the shopkeeper's bankai and made a beeline for Hisuna, who was now singing her heart out. Ha 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 ha. She was getting close to finishing the chant, but Talbumasuke was not about to let that happen. Activating his yellow aura, he increased his speed as much as he could as he approached Hisuna, and as he passed by her he swung down her front with his right blade, pivoted and swung down again at her back with his left. You will not be rejuvenating anyone today, Kukaki Hisuna, Talbumasuke told her. Hisuna did not have the chance to react to Talbumasuke. He came in way too fast. Byakuya noticed it when she was cut down. To say he was unhappy would have been an understatement. Hisuna! Byakuya shouted. He made to rush towards her with his speed, but Ulquiorra cut him off. He stopped the Espada from attacking him with his lance by way of a barricade of blades. And just where do you think you're going? Ulquiorra asked. To aid my wife. Move. Byakuya scowled in hate. If you want me to move, you'll have to do it by force. I have my orders, Ulquiorra responded. However, the Quarto was about to learn that getting between Byakuya and his pride was a critical logical error. Gladly, Byakuya spoke contemptuously and surrounded Ulquiorra from all sides with his Bankai, Gokiai, Senbonzakura Kage Yoshi. Ulquiorra was ripped to shreds by the billions of blades of Byakuya's sphere. Ulquiorra was torn apart from so many sides that his regeneration would take him a while to pull himself back together. In the meantime, this gave Byakuya the opportunity to go after Talbumasuke. Closing in on the Arrancar Lord, he sent out a wave of blades towards him, but was caught off guard when Talbumasuke took a swing with his blade and a slash cut right across Byakuya's torso. Hofuku, Talbumasuke stated calmly and then lifted his hand into the air, creating a rift in space around Byakuya's location that spread outward in multiple colors. It was white in the center, followed by a layer of blue, then a dark purple, then black and then red before returning to thin strip of black. Kaiho. The rift ripped through Byakuya and the leader of the Kukaki family fell. I'm surprised, Kukaki Byakuya. I thought even if your wife was injured you would still maintain your calm serenity and tranquil fury like you always do, but I guess I overestimated you. Didn't I? Talbumasuke then crossed his swords over his back as a black katana collided against them. Oh hello, Talbumasuke said as he looked over his shoulder, Kurosaki Ichigo. Back at Talbumasuk's original location, Urahara realized that Talbumasuk had escaped and sealed his Bankai. Lelich appeared on the shopkeeper and the head captain's location. "Oh, nice of you to finally join us, Lelich," Urahara said. Lamperouge Teiko, how is everyone else at the moment?" Yamamoto asked. Largely irrelevant with Ichigo now engaged with Talbumasuk, the first half of the war should be ending soon, Lelich said. "First half?" Yamamoto questioned. Urahara nodded. "Lelich, before the battle started, mentioned to me about a second level of release that the Espada have, Segunda Etapa. If Talbumasuk really wanted to crush us, the best strategy would be for the Espada to use this form right at the start of the battle, but he didn't do it. My guess is he still isn't sure just how strong we are, so this battle, for him, is a tactical battle. When given opportunity he'll retreat and double back to Hueco Mundo," Lelich stated. "What? We should crush him before he has that chance?" Yamamoto thundered. "I'm afraid that's nearly impossible, Suteiko," Urahara responded. "Talbumasuk's time-stopping ability would allow him to escape from my Bankai each time he used it, seeing how easily he slipped by it this time. We'd only be delaying the inevitable. However, next time he won't be looking to escape and he'll come at us with the full brunt of his and the Espada's power. I get the feeling he's stronger than he's letting on. He wants to retreat, he's not looking for victory this battle, but his casualties are rising and I think he knows that he has to retreat soon," Urahara stated. Lelich nodded in agreement. "So my final move is to pit him against Kurosaki Ichigo." "I'm afraid you've lost me," the head captain was bewildered by Lelich's tactics. Sure, Ichigo was strong, but Talbumasuk had punched out Kiraku so easily. How could the substitute fare against such power? Talbumasuk is still following some of Aizen's orders. This includes testing out Kurosaki Ichigo's power. At the start of the battle he sealed up Orium because if he had to fight Ichigo's power right then and there it would have screwed up his fighting with us. An anomaly pushed to his limits is a dangerous thing. It's like opening Pandora's box. Talbumasuk won't underestimate Ichigo and he won't take it easy on him, but with the damage you inflicted their strength should be about even right now, Lelich theorized. We place too much faith in that boy, Yamamoto scoffed. But necessary faith, Lelich justified. Aizen wanted him as an equal or rival in combat and I'm looking forward to seeing how strong he'll get if that power is drawn out. Ichigo and Talbumasuk clashed blades with each other. The substitute clashed against Talbumasuk as the Arrancar Lord used his yellow aura to increase his speed. With his injuries, Talbumasuk and Ichigo were currently evenly matched. Both began rushing at each other, flanking strikes. Ichigo fired a Getsuga Tensho, which Talbumasuk dispelled with his left-hand blade before striking forward with his right as Ichigo blocked. The teen shifted to the side and threw his weight against the black-haired overlord before cutting him across the waist almost in the exact same spot Urahara had cut Talbumasuk. Talbumasuk used his right-hand blade to activate his time slower and then, with Ichigo slowed down, he slashed him across the abdomen. He brought in for another strike, but Ichigo vanished and reappeared behind Talbumasuk. He struck forward, but missed with his slowed speed. Talbumasuk dispelled his left-hand sword, grabbed Ichigo by the collar and threw him into a tree. Ichigo realized that he and Talbumasuk were near the cemetery where his mother was buried. Ichigo hollow-fied. This place meant a lot to him, even if it was a replica. The hollowification was enough to cancel the effects of his slowed speed and he charged straight at Talbumasuk, but the Arrancar Lord saw him coming, due to the distance between them, and changed his aura to blue, dispelling his other sword. Shinsina Hanu. The large blaze of bright blue flames engulfed Ichigo and even with a hollow-fied Getsuga Tensho fired reflexively, Ichigo was blasted into the cemetery, wrecking apart several tombstones in the process. Lelich could sense this from his location and bit his thumbnail. Relax, Urahara told him, is suspected he might overpower Ichigo, but if Ichigo starts playing defense you taught him, Talbumasuk will exhaust his power. Then all that will be needed for something personally offensive to Ichigo to occur and all his fury will empower him. You experienced this yourself. Lelich recalled what Urahara was talking about. Don't you dare insult the woman I loved like that. Rage when controlled is very potent, Urahara said seriously. Back at the cemetery, Ichigo was getting up from the ground. Hollow mask still on his face, but his Shiakusho had been torn wide open. Only the sleeves were left. He had yet to affix his eyes back at Talbumasuk, but he noticed a piece of granite lying at his feet. Masa. Love. 1. Ichigo knew what the rest said. And to make matters worse, he saw a piece of granite lying next to it. Saki. Other. 94. Ichigo grit his teeth in hate as he looked around. His mother's grave had been smashed to pieces by Talbumasuk's attack. Ichigo knew the location he was in. His mother's grave hadn't been broken by his body. Talbumasuk's fire and spiritual power and shattered it in replica or not, Ichigo would make him pay. Talbumasuk noticed Ichigo's frustration as he stood in front of him and picked up a part of the granite lying at his feet. Kikuro. 19. Talbumasuk smirked. This was the sort of opportunity he had been waiting for. Oh, I'm sorry, was that your mother's grave? Talbumasuk said mockingly and tossed aside the piece of stone in his hand. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I just don't know my own strength sometimes, he chuckled to himself. When it comes to pressing a protagonist's berserk button, normally the worst a villainous overlord like Talbumasuk has to face is the unrelenting fury of that protagonist. However, Talbumasuk was about to get a little more than he bargained for. He was about to learn that Ichigo plus hollowification plus anger taken up to the highest possible level did not mix well at all. Replica or not, upon seeing his mother's grave so unceremoniously destroyed into rubble, Ichigo became excessively angry to a point where all he could think of was how he was going to make Talbumasuk pay for his actions, and the fact that Talbumasuk basically just mockingly acted like that's what he was trying to do in the first place set Ichigo off like a firecracker at a festival. Talbumasuk! Ichigo roared. Both of his eyes turned yellow and glowed, the ends by his ears crackled with sparking energy, and Ichigo became surrounded in a vicious aura of energy colored the same way as his Getsuga. Anger and rage became the dominance of his mind, and a blistering surge of Ryutsu burst forth from him. Talbumasuk put up his hand to block the fierce winds, only to notice that his finger had been cut just from standing so close to it. He quickly leapt back to a safer distance, but at the same time he was thinking just what the hell was going on with Ichigo and why his Ryutsu was climbing so high and showed no signs of stopping. He expected Ichigo to become several times stronger, but certainly his sensei didn't think it would get this high, did he? Finally the raging typhoon of energy stopped and Ichigo emerged. However, he was not quite himself. His Hakama was torn to shreds, now only covering down to his knees. His legs looked decisively hollow white and his feet were clawed with red tufts of fur on his ankles. Ichigo's sleeves were as frayed as the hems of his pants, revealing white clawed arms and tufts of fur on his wrists as well. In his right hand he had Tensei Zanjutsu well gripped in it. His Kosude and Shitaji were gone, except for the sleeves, revealing that, it could be concluded, that his entire body had become like a hollow. From the hole in his chest with black lines that spider-webbed in different directions over his pectorals, which hung down over his thick muscular body, to the skull-shaped head with 2 rows of hungry sharp teeth, to the horns protruding from said head, to the black sclera and yellow irises without pupils, to the white flesh, possibly flesh, it was hard to tell. There could be no doubt that Ichigo had become a hollow, or at the very least a cross between a Soul Reaper and a hollow, unlike a Vizard or an Arrancar. Orange hair, more like a mane, cascaded down his back and tufts of red fur formed around his neck like a collar of sorts. 2 black stripes ran down over his eyes from forehead to chin. What is this? Talbumasuk wondered. Could this be the power Ulquiorra sensed from within Ichigo? Is this the great power that Aizen-sensei believed the boy to possess? Ichigo, however, was not thinking on such things or things related to it. His mind had lost all reasoning. There was only one thought radiating through his mind right now: kill a Tremere Talbumasuk and do it in the most painful way possible. Talbumasuk smirked smugly. Well, it looks like I might actually get a challenge after all. He summoned both of his swords and took a stance with both of them crossed in front of the other, knees and elbows bent, to prepare to fight Ichigo. He called for his purple aura and cast his yellow aura ability thrice upon himself, preparing the green aura in his left hand. Ichigo, staring at Talbumasuk, picked up his sword and swung twice. 2 full-powered blasts of Getsuga came shooting out of his Zanpakuto faster than a bala. The first one crashed against Talbumasuk's swords as he put up a defense. He flowed his time reversal into his swords to nullify the attack, but it wasn't working. Ichigo's Ryutsu was just that dense. Not good. The second slammed in, empowering the first, and Talbumasuk was caught up in the attack, a nasty gash appearing on his chest, tearing open his uniform completely. The laceration ran from his shoulder down diagonally in an arc to his opposite side hip. Talbumasuk panted as he hofuku and slashed to create spatial lacerations on Ichigo's location. The lacerations appeared alright, but they regenerated almost immediately after. Ichigo scratched his chest as if noticing that he had been attacked, but also noticing that he hadn't been hurt. Just how strong has he become? Talbumasuk, for once, felt a sense of fear as he stared at Ichigo's hollow form. Did he become stronger than we calculated? What should I do? Talbumasuk, since the start of the battle, was only now starting to feel panic and fear. Ichigo vanished in a flash of crimson, and Talbumasuk noticed 1 second later that Ichigo was right behind him. Right through my Ryutsu. Ichigo stabbed forward with his Zanpakuto, but Talbumasuk sidestepped Ichigo's attack and slashed at his arm, but Ichigo suddenly brought his foot up and smacked Talbumasuk in the side of his torso with his clawed appendage. Then he turned and, with a fierce screech, slashed at him, but Talbumasuk stopped the attack with his blades crossed over his body in a plus pattern. Damn it. The Arrancar Lord fought to push Ichigo back and eventually did so, or believed he had managed to do so, but instead Ichigo had leapt back of his own accord and began to charge red energy in between his horns. Impossible, that's a zero. Talbumasuk shook frantically out of his shock. No, impossible or not, I can't let that hit me at point blank. He retreated back a good distance and quickly switched his aura to blue. Just before Ichigo fired off the zero, though, he used Sonito and got within point blank range of Talbumasuk right before the Arrancar Lord shouted, Shinsei no Hanu. The gigantic blue blast of energy collided with Ichigo's zero, but Ichigo's zero was more of a nuke while Talbumasuk's attack was more like a cement truck loaded up with dynamite. Ichigo's attack overpowered Talbumasuk completely and left the Arrancar leader burned, bleeding, panting, and shirtless. Ichigo took some damage too, what little there was from the flames that had managed to get around his zero before it was overloaded, but it regenerated easily. TCH. Talbumasuk spat. We cannot continue like this. I have to get out of here. Talbumasuk snapped his fingers and a series of Garganta opened around the town. Ciela broke free of her Kido, noticing that this was her chance to escape. She took it. Ulquiorra got up from the ground and clutched his shoulder. I did not think that a mere Soul Reaper could damage me to such an extent. Senbonzakura really is the death of 1,000 blades as it is fabled to be. Yami saw the Garganta and whined. Arg. Time to go already. He had done a considerable job keeping Hitsugaya and Yukatake at bay. The Espada had proved durable even against the might of his own zero, and Hitsugaya's Hayat and Hyokaso only managed to cover only Yami's arm and leg. Yami sealed his form up and retreated into the Garganta, grumbling something about wanting to fight a giant reptile beast the same size as his enraged form. Stefan, having recovered from Sparga's initial assault, was just about to activate his final form when the Garganta opened near Sparga. Well, that's a letdown, seems like the party's over. Sparga walked into the Garganta and sealed his Zanpakuto. I had a good time though, Soul Reaper Captain, catch ya later. The Garganta slammed shut. Halibal saw the Garganta open and then noticed her fraction scattered on the ground. We'll finish this another time, Soul Reaper. Halibal told him she used Sonito to gather her fraction. She tossed Apache over her shoulder and picked up Sun and Mila Rose under her arms as she sealed her form. Ishine let her go. Their objective was to defend Karakura town, not pursue the enemy. Yuriuki kicked Starkey away from her and prepared to go back after him with her amazing speed. Starkey was about to retaliate, but the Garganta opened behind him. Guess, I gotta go, he said to Yuriuki. Yuriuki stopped, so that's it. You guys are running away. I believe a Tremere-sama would prefer the term tactical retreat, Starkey said and went into the Garganta. Neliel breathed heavily. For maybe 5 minutes they had played this game now, the captain time and again dodging her. She had scored glancing hits, and he looked to be in pretty bad shape. He was simply delaying the inevitable. Again, she stood ready to fight, beating one of her front hooves to the ground. Finally, the Kenpeki of Zaraki stood to face her head-on. He had run out of options. This was it. Screaming her battle cry, she charged. Kenpeki faced the green-haired Amazon down as she came on. This was the single most deadly fight he had been in since that one time when he was young, in a bar in the Rukon. Neilri died then, and nearly dead now. This had to work. As Neliel closed in, he ripped off his eye patch. His Ryotsu exploded into full, and grabbing his sword in both hands, he swung down on her with all his might as she closed in. Neliel, shocked by his sudden increase in power, let her charge falter, and the blow connected with the bone lance. A huge crack appeared in the lance, from handle to tip. Neliel staggered back, shocked. Methodically banging his sword against her lance, Kenpeki forced her back, step by step. Desperately, Neliel tried to bash him with the lance, but Kenpeki sidestepped, pushed her lance and sword arm aside, and sliced her right side up. Not relenting, he kept cutting, slashing, stabbing in a slow flurry of blows, and Neliel found it impossible to dodge all of them. Finally, with one cut across her midsection, it was all too much. Her Resurrection failed her, and as it dissolved, she fell over on her back, broken. Her Zanpakuto was cut in half. There she lay, a bloodied mess, Kenpeki not much better looking but still standing. How? She managed, weakly. I used my head for fightin'. Kenpeki said, taking a seat next to her. What? When you can't beat an enemy, you figure out a weakness to exploit. Course, I wouldn't done that if I wasn't sure I'd die otherwise. Weakness. Yes, that's right. She mumbled. That lance is terribly strong on the charge, Butte, Kenpeki said, it's shit on the defense. So all I really had to do was attack. Needed an opening, though. Weakly, Neliel pointed to his eye patch. Yeah, this thing holds down my Ryotsu. I figured, if I put it back on, and then used my kendo the moment I ripped it off, I could cut hard and strong enough to break your charge. That's why I kept dodging. Quit talking and kill me. She screamed. Mustering what little strength she had left, she grabbed her broken Zanpakuto, attempting a slash. Kenpeki stopped her hand before it could connect. Kill me, you damned coward. Kill me if you have the guts. Beyond her with grief, beyond sense and sensibility, Neliel screamed, tears running freely down her cheeks. It was all over for her. However, as she lay there, feeling defeated, a Garganta opened to her right. Neliel looked to the side at the swirling blackness. Well, seems like your leader doesn't want you to die, Kenpeki grinned, you should probably go in that thing. Neliel looked at him like he had two heads. Didn't he understand that she wanted to die? What are you looking at me like that for? I got no obligation to kill you. You're a real woman. If I let you go, maybe we can have a rematch later. Her mind swirling around, acting like she was a small child that had just fallen off a jungle gym and was wandering around in a daze, Neliel struggled to get to her feet. There you go, now hurry up and piss off. I can feel a large Ryotsu overhead to the northeast and you can bet I want to fight it, Kenpeki grinned. Wordlessly, Neliel made her way inside the Garganta and it closed behind her. From her perch up on a nearby lamppost that had miraculously not been destroyed in the battle, Yachiru hopped onto Kenpeki's shoulder. Are you gonna go after that really strong Ryotsu, Kenny? She asked. Yeah. Which way? Yachiru pointed in a random direction. That way. Kenpeki took off. The Garganta opened for Grimjo, but Tissen wouldn't leave him alone. Hey! Let me go in peace, damn it! He shouted. I will not. Tissen declared. Tissen. Let him go. Lelich ordered. But, Lelich, we have bigger problems to worry about. We can let the small fry go for now, besides I never figured we'd be able to kill any of the Espada this round anyway, Lelich stated. That large Ryotsu feels like it's coming from Kurosaki. Damn, feels like we bit off more than we can chew if that's why we're running. We probably could take him if we used Segunda Etapa, but I guess Talbumasuk feels it's better than we retreat. Later, Tissen, Grimjo then walked into the Garganta. The Garganta opened for Mia. Oh, back luck Kyan-kun, looks like you didn't beat me in time, she told the panting 13th Division Fukotaiko. She blew a kiss at him, "Ta-ta Kyan-kun." She walked into the Garganta. "I really," Kyan huffed, "really," he huffed again, "hate that woman." Loli got up from the ground groaning and saw the Garganta behind her. "So I survived. I hope Miyasama is okay." She walked through the Garganta. Mainoli bashed away Nimu's incoming strike with her claw and made to jab Nimu with her stinger, but the 12th Division Fukotaiko bent over backwards to dodge the strike and then kicked Mainoli in the chest down towards the ground. The blonde Fraxion rolled over backwards multiple times and then sat up and shook off her disorientation. She then noticed a Garganta open next to her. She entered it and left. "It seems they're retreating," Nimu said. "Yeah, and I think I know why. Do you feel that monstrous Ryotsu?" Rukia asked. "Yes, it is quite powerful. I believe it's coming from the substitute Soul Reaper Kurosaki Ichigo," Nimu stated. "What? It can't be Ichigo. It's way too strong and it's all twisted." Rukia began to take off, but she didn't get more than a few feet before the Ryotsu across the distance became so thick that she could not make any closer of an advance towards it. "This spiritual pressure, it's enormous. Ichigo, what's happened to you?" A Garganta opened near Kira just as the Novena Espada slammed Mayuri into the ground with Renji's Bankai and the thing dissipated. And not a moment too soon. "Damn it, I thought I was going to die for a moment there." Kira entered into the Garganta. Back at Talbumasuk and Ichigo's battle, the hollow-eyed teenager's mind recognized the Garganta in a flashback of his battle with Grimjo. When Grimjo exited through it meant that Talbumasuk was retreating, and in his current state of mind he was not about to let that happen. Shouting a shrill battle cry, he charged towards Talbumasuk like a bullet rather than simply using his ridiculously overpowered Sonido. Talbumasuk realized he wouldn't escape at the rate Ichigo was coming in, but he had one chance to get away. "This won't stop him, but it'll give me the few seconds I need to escape." Talbumasuk utilized his time stop ability. Ichigo's Ryotsu was so fierce that he wasn't stopped straight off, but he slowed down considerably as he approached Talbumasuk. The effect would not last 20 seconds though, only a few, as Talbumasuk used them preciously to hop into the Garganta and shut it. Ichigo, after breaking free from the effects, got to the Garganta and swiped at it just as it closed. Angered further that his opponent had escaped, Ichigo reared back and let out another shrill battle cry. It was like someone had taken a metal fork and raked it down a display window and combined it with a hollow's cry. The noise was unbearable, and the level of Ryotsu that made everything feel like gravity had intensified 3 times over did not help. One man decided to put an end to the chaos though. Head Captain Yamamoto came to attack Ichigo and put him down, but the demonic Soul Reaper saw him coming and chucked his Zanpakuto right through Yamamoto so fast he didn't even realize Ichigo had thrown it. It took a chunk of the old man's beard with it. Ichigo wasted no time using his hyperactive Sonido to get behind Yamamoto and send his fist through the back of the right side of the old man's chest. Ichigo was completely out of control. Anything and everything was an enemy to him right now. As Yamamoto began to feel feeble, weakened already by Talbumasuk's earlier attack, Anohana appeared to his side. "Head Captain, you must take it easy," she told him. "Allow me." She prepared to face off against Ichigo's demonic form. "No, let me," Lelouch said, appearing and formed in front of Ichigo. "Lelouch, wait." Anohana called after him, but it was too late. It didn't matter though. Lelouch knew what he was doing. Ichigo stopped for a moment and seemed to recognize Lelouch, stopping his attack, hesitating. The hesitation didn't last long though, not that Lelouch thought it would. He was already in Bankai and he had the perfect counter-maneuver for Ichigo's overpowered form. "This was hell on Aizen, let's see what it'll do to you." Seishin no Kaimusho. Lelouch extended his hand out towards Ichigo. A glass prison formed itself around Ichigo, trapping him and exposing him and crushing him under the weight of his own Ryotsu. It seemed to work until Ichigo's hand glowed and suddenly Tensou Zanjutsu came telekinetically soaring back from wherever it had been thrown and, of its own accord, slashed apart the glass prison. "What?" Lelouch was surprised. Ichigo grasped hold of his sword and prepared to strike. Bakudo 61, Rikyu Koro. The Kido slammed into Ichigo's midsection. Lelouch was amazed when Ichigo was unable to break out of it. Bakudo 99, Kin. The black ropes bound Ichigo further in place, sticking into midair, trapping him. Who? Lelouch was surprised when Anohana suddenly formed up alongside him. I told you, you should have let me handle this. No way. Lelouch was amazed that Anohana was about to take the field to fight. Wait a minute, Lelouch realized, what do you think you can do? Ichigo, how he currently is, cut down both the head captain and Talbumasuk without any problems. What can you possibly do? The Suteiko is still injured from Talbumasuk's grievous attack on his body. Talbumasuk had expelled a lot of Ryotsu already with all the fighting he was doing. I have not fought yet, merely used healing Kido to keep as many as I can alive. I am, as you would say, fresh out of the starting gate, Anohana said. There is a reason you did not command me to fight, yes? I wish not to think that you wanted me only to heal, right? Anohana smiled at Lelouch. Lelouch closed his eyes and coughed. Yes, that's exactly right. You are my secret weapon, Anohana Teiko. Please do as you see fit, but please, do try to let Kurosaka live. Then, Lelouch-kun, you might want to back away, Anohana stated. Her eyes became serious in such a manner that Lelouch had never seen before. This battlefield is not the best place for you right now. Hi, Lelouch left in a hurry. Ichigo with effort broke free from Anohana's Kido. He glared at her. In his mind, there was something about this woman that put him on edge in such a manner that did not come from the old man, the man in the white coat or the black-haired teenager. He stood his ground. I see even a beast like you can think rationally. Anohana said. She reached for the end of her braid and untied it until it reached the base of her neck. I don't know if you are still Kurosaki Ichigo or some other being, but in case you aren't, allow me to state my name. She tossed her braid behind her. I am captain of Squad 4, Anohana reached behind her back for her no daichi and drew it out. Anohana Retsu. Ichigo simply scowled in anticipation for the battle before him. To be continued. Chapter 82, Anohana Retsu, Proof of Power and Fear. Third-person POV. Come on Orium, wake up. He's gone now, can't you get out of there? Tatsuki asked the glowing prism that trapped Orium inside. Lelouch appeared on scene. She's still not waking up. She won't respond at all. Tatsuki complained. Lelouch sighed, reached out and touched the prism. It zapped him. He shook his now numb hand. Well, Talbumasuk sure knows his binding spells. He retorted. Are you smiling? Tatsuki raged. If I am, it's because I find all of this to be so fascinating. I never thought Talbumasuk could be this much of a threat. Now stand aside. Lelouch commanded. He waved his hand a few inches from the prism, bringing up a keyboard of sorts. I figured as much, a formula barrier. There aren't many that use this type of Kido anymore. What's a formula barrier? Tatsuki asked. I don't have time to explain the details, just understand that I can save Orium. I just need time and silence. As if on cue, Tatsuki heard the howl from Ichigo. But what about him? Anohana's on the job. She can handle it, Lelouch said, hopefully. Tatsuki understood and backed away to let Lelouch work. She turned and looked up at the sky where the battle was commencing. Ichigo, what's happened to you? Are you, she thought of Kaibun, like me? High up in the air, Ichigo and Anohana were clashing. Ichigo and the second oldest captain clashed swords with one another, pressing their weapons against each other. He's definitely strong. Anohana thought as she clashed with Ichigo's blade. How did he get this powerful? Before he wasn't even on Jushiro or Shunsui's level, now he's... Anohana was broken from her thoughts when she saw energy charging in between Ichigo's horns. She broke away from the hollow-fied Soul Reaper and dodged well to the side before the nuke-sized blast went off. It impacted against the barrier at the far reaches of the town, creating an explosion in the water the size of tactical nuke. Thankfully no one was over there. That is one powerful Zero. Anohana had no time to think much else. Ichigo used his Hyper Sonido to get right behind her and she was forced to block with her Zanpakuto. I could use my Bankai, but I don't want to kill him. I just have to hold out. If I know Lelouch, he's already working on what I believe could be our best chance at restoring Kurosaka-san. Still, Anohana swept underneath Ichigo, turned, spun and popped into the air, slicing him in the chest before landing on her feet a few steps away from him. It was a small scratch, no bigger than her finger, but damage had indeed been inflicted. However, it regenerated right away. I can cut him, Anohana confirmed. Hado 31, Shakkeiho. The attack impacted against Ichigo, blinding him with the artificial smokescreen created by the impact, as Anohana's Shakkeiho was several times larger than the average user's Kido. All of his functions are converted to power. He has no tactical ingenuity. He's similar to Zaraki. Anohana used this opportunity to get behind Ichigo and attack with her sword. She sliced Ichigo in the arm, but the damage regenerated. Ichigo, recognizing his wound, attacked Anohana with a mighty sword swing. She escaped the pressure from the swing by sliding back across the air. Ichigo slashed the air twice in less than a millisecond, creating two full-powered Getsugas, which sailed towards the motherly captain. Bakudo 39, in Kosen. The arc shield blocked the Getsuga as best it could, enlarged thanks to Anohana's monstrous spiritual pressure, but it was going to break through and she knew it, but she was already prepared with a follow-up. Hado 58, Tenran. The whirlwind shot forth from her hands and blasted towards Ichigo. He stood there as if it were a summer breeze and then fired an unchanged arced zero from in between his horns like a cutting laser. The beam was narrow and concentrated and continuous. Anohana dodged the side, but Ichigo followed her with the beam, ultimately though he did finally catch her as she ran up and away higher into the air and burnt a hole in her Haori. Anohana prepared a countermeasure with Kido, but Ichigo used his Hyper Sonido and got right behind her and fired two Getsugas at point blank. Back on the ground, Lelouch was working as fast as he could. He knew Anohana wasn't fighting to defeat Ichigo, merely to buy him time for an unspoken plan both knew was the right way to go. If there was one person they could count on to bring Ichigo to his senses, it was the girl currently trapped in the cage. When Talbumasuk said that the barrier couldn't be undone while he was in the same dimension as Orium, he meant that he could rewrite the barrier's Reishi composition, if someone tried to remove the barrier, thereby resetting the deconstruction sequence, at will, or, possibly, reset it before Orium could do anything once she was free. Lelouch was a boon at hacking. It was one of those little talents he picked up while alive and managed to perfect while in the research department. How else would Aizen have never detected him whenever he logged into the system to spy or look up personal information on him? Lelouch was getting down to the last two locks. A few more sequences of code and he could set Orium free. Talbumasuk really wasn't taking any chances with this. Damn him, but I know what he's like now. I won't be bested by him again. Today was a field test, the next time we'll both be prepared to go all out with everything on the table, Lelouch said and undid the penultimate lock. Got it, now one more. Up in the sky, Anohana had retreated from Ichigo. She had been slashed twice by Ichigo's Getsuga, once in the back and once along the side. A deep, arcing laceration lay across her back, splitting her scabbard, Haori, Kosid and Shitagian, penetrating through several layers of skin, almost cutting down to the bone. Anohana was lucky she was strong as she was. A normal captain-level Soul Reaper would have been sliced in half. She had also been cut along her left arm and the left side of her abdomen in between her ribs and her hip. She was forced to tear off the entire left sleeve of her Shiakusho, revealing her smooth, though bleeding, skin beneath from her slight-toned wrist all the way up to her shoulder. The strap to her light pink bra was clearly visible. Ichigo had done quite the extent of damage on the elderly captain. Never before had she fought an opponent that not only was not afraid to attack her, but could damage her so severely. She was not panting, not yet, the damage wasn't that bad. It stung like crazy, but Anohana wasn't the type of person to go down from a few cuts. If she believed she had the time, or reach the really bad one on her back for that matter, she would grip her bleeding wounds and heal herself while running around, but Ichigo had managed to slip right through her Ryotsu bubble without any trouble at all, which proved just how dangerous he was. She could not afford to drop her guard for even a second, even if it meant fighting with injuries. I only need to hold out for a little while longer. Any minute now, if I know Lelouch well enough, I should have my opportunity to strike back. Ichigo stared at Anohana, with his yellow eyes, wondering if his prey was going to attack or not. When Anohana stood her ground, he leapt at her and swung rapidly with his blade a total of 5 times. First he swung down towards her right. Anohana bent her knees and slunk to the left to block, holding her sword up horizontally. Ichigo came swinging across. Anohana held her sword with both her hands, holding the weapon upright and slid further to Ichigo's right. He swung back the other way, pushing Anohana back towards his left. He then swung up, bringing his blade from down below his waist. Anohana took a step back, and put up her blade horizontally, even with her chest, blade end pointed towards Ichigo's blade. She really felt the impact from that one. Finally Ichigo swung back down from on high. Rather than block, Anohana leapt back, dodging out of the way of the force of Ryotsu that came with the swung. Curling her blade towards her body with her elbows and then gripping the handle to her body with the side of her left arm, Anohana held up her hands. Hado 73, Soren Sakasui. The twin lotus blue flame went blazing towards Ichigo. He fired 2 full-powered Getchugas again. The first attack blasted through Anohana's attack and the second one came rocketing towards her, but Anohana's Kido had given her time to prepare for the second shot. Bakudo 39, in Kosen. The Getchuga was blocked, but Ichigo used Hyper Sonido and got behind Anohana. She used Shunpo and escaped though, he was becoming predictable. She was growing rather tired of his "no I am behind you" gimmick. Appearing above Ichigo at an angle, Anohana launched another Kido. Hado 63, Reikoho. The yellow energy slammed into Ichigo right in the side of the neck, causing his head to be forcibly shot towards his right shoulder. Normally that kind of sudden motion was grounds for the snapping of one's neck, but in his current form Ichigo was anything but normal. Anohana now took her moment's reprise to heal the bleeding injury in the side of her abdomen while Ichigo forcibly relocated the pivotal joint in his neck and got the feeling back in it. He then let out a battle cry, the force of which tore open Anohana's other wounds wider, causing her to double over. Her back would tear open if her wounds became a few more inches in diameter. Thankfully, finally, her help had arrived. Ichigo-kun! Ichigo-kun, stop this! Orium appeared on the scene, gliding across the air on her Santon Kishun. She became terrified when she saw Ichigo's form. Now's my chance, Anohana thought to herself. Thanks to her knowledge that she had the power to injure Ichigo, she knew she had a move that could inflict serious damage. The impact could be enough to knock him out of his current state. Oh, incandescent glare on the mountainous shore. Ichigo-kun, what's happened to you? Orium started to cry. All she had been told by Lelouch was that Ichigo had gone out of control and that he needed her. She was unaware of the details of anything that had been going on or how much time had passed since she had been knocked out. Was this so you could protect us? Protect me. Sharper than steel. Greater than the heavens. White guard, red blade, and mournful sun formed together. Ichigo looked at Orium, but did not recognize her at first. Instead he rushed towards her. Anohana had no way of stopping herself mid-incantation though, she could only have faith that somehow, Ichigo would never harm his own girlfriend and, if he did, then he was no longer a soul reaper and death had to be brought to him. He would have to be dealt with as a hollow. Orium screamed in fright and recoiled, causing her necklace to float up into Ichigo's direct line of sight. I got you this necklace. I saw it in the store and I thought it matched your hairpins. I thought you would like it. I love it, thank you Ichigo-kun. Ichigo stopped on a dime. Ori, hi, me. He looked at her, her image now establishing in his brain. That's right, it's me. Orium placed a hand upon her chest and floated closer to Ichigo. I'm okay now. Please stop Ichigo-kun. It's over, Talbumasuke is gone. There's no more reason to fight. Revenge. Revenge. Okasan, revenge, Ichigo sputtered out. Light the fire in the soul of sand. Break out through the heavens. Night of justice, night of judgment, and night of lost days. Okasan's grave destroyed, my revenge, Ichigo got out. Now Orium understood. She may not have seen it, but she could understand what was making Ichigo so enraged, angry, and possibly confused and berserk. This wasn't because of her. Ichigo must have witnessed his mother's grave destroyed, possibly by Talbumasuke, no most likely by Talbumasuke, and it had infuriated him. I understand. Orium said, composing herself. You're angry because your mother's grave was destroyed, she tightened her gaze, but you're hurting your friends and me. Orium exclaimed. The battle is over, Ichigo-kun, please, return to your normal self. Please do it, she sniffed, for me. She pleaded. Ori, hi, me. Form together, bring your retribution down. Don't you remember, Ichigo-kun, this is a replica of Karakura Town. Your mother's grave is fine. Orium told him. Even if it was the real thing, we could go to the cemetery together and rebuild it. I know how much your mother means to you. Orium smiled at him. Ori, hi, me, Ichigo almost seemed to start to feel better from his girlfriend's compassion. I'm your girlfriend. You know I would do anything to help you. I love you, Ichigo. Orium declared. Hearing the honorific dropped from his name, Ichigo became paralyzed as he stood in place, frozen, not knowing what to do. He had almost come to his senses, almost. Heido 98, Shinsei Tamashii Ken. Divine Soul Sword, a gigantic, white long sword with a curved wing-shaped guard, glowing white with a silver handle formed in front of Anohana before firing forward and jamming itself through Ichigo's back, sticking out the other end and exploding. Ichigo! Orium cried out to him. She directed her Santon Kishun like a magic carpet and watched Ichigo fell from the sky. He had suffered enough damage that he had been knocked out of his hollow form, clad in Bankai, but he was completely unconscious. Orium got underneath him and held up her arms. Ichigo landed right in her awaiting embrace. There was not a single injury to his physical body, either his hollow form had absorbed all the damage or it had regenerated it for him right before Ichigo exited from its form. Either way, it didn't matter to Orium. He's okay now. Orium smiled at her unconscious boyfriend and hugged him to her. Oh, Ichigo. She started to cry. She had been so scared, but now everything would be okay. A collateral damage check was done on everyone. Most of the combatants had survived and were stabilized before the march back to the Soul Society would commence. However, the Godiai had lost 3 of its prominent fighters, Madara Mikeku, Ise Nanao, and Hisagi Shihei. As people were being healed and everyone was loitering about waiting for the return trip to commence, Urahara approached Lelouch. When do you think he'll be back? He asked. Not sure, another month perhaps, Lelouch stated. A month. So iPhone seemed irritated. I understand your frustration. We're throwing the world out of balance by locking Karakura Town in a perpetual state of isolation, Lelouch stated. No, Sweat, I got it all figured out, Urahara responded. I constructed this barrier so that as long as Karakura Town is cut off, it's like it doesn't exist. Spiritually unaware people will walk through it and be on the other side. They don't see Karakura Town. The process is complicated to explain, but trust me when I say it'll all work out. Of course I trust you, as I'm sure the rest of the Godiai does as well, else we would have not asked you to do this, Lelouch stated. Urahara fixed his hat at the compliment. So what now? Yuriuki asked. Now we prepare for the counterattack. Mayuri and Nemu are under orders to extract the memories from the combatants of this battle, alive or dead, so that I can view them as video files and try to come up with some new tactics, combined with the information I already have on the Aaron car, to try and come up with a proper plan to defeat Talbumasuk once and for all. We will win for good the next time he shows up, Lelouch stated. Well, we know you'll come up with something extraordinary, but simple, Lelouch, that's why you're the tactician, Urahara told him. There was a hushed silence over the quartet. After about 20 seconds Yuriuki broke it. So if the battle's over and the real Karakura Town is intact, that means we won, right? Yeah, why? Lelouch asked. Then this calls for a celebration. Yuriuki declared. 3 hours later, Shiba Manor. With many different colored lights strung up everywhere, a buffet table set up in the corner, and everyone dancing and acting like idiots, the Shiba Manor ballroom and foyer had turned into a wild house party. Chisato was getting her moves down on the dance floor along with every other combatant that had participated in the battle. True, the loss of life still bothered the minds of the dearly departed, but as is always known, harsh reality can be deterred by taking your mind off, and right now Chisato just wanted to dance like wild. Over by one of the tables, Ranjika was drinking bottle after bottle of sake and practically doing a strip tease for the boys. Of course, not everyone at the party, the majority of the injured were in the 4th Division's care ward, under Anohana's watchful eye. Those admitted were, Ichigo, Renji, Byakuya, Hisuna, all of the Vizards, Momo, Shunsui, Ryu, Yolanda, Yasuai, Seijin Chad, Uryu, and Kian. The others with injuries were considered able-bodied enough that they could go to the Shiba Manor if they wished, but were asked to come to the ward right after they were finished partying. Ichigo hadn't woken up since Anohana had knocked him out. Orium wanted to stay by his bedside, but Tatsuki encouraged that they should go and have fun and they could come back and see him later. Anohana had told them that that was probably the best idea and that when Ichigo awoke they would be the first to know. Ichigo finally did open his eyes, and it was really late at night when he did. He expected to be on the battlefield, but instead he was in a hospital room. Unfamiliar ceiling. He moaned in his head. His mind then flashed back to the battle and everything that had been going on. Worried, believing this wasn't the best time for a nap, he sprang up, but before he could get out of bed he was called out to. "Calm down, Ichigo, there's no reason to get excited, everything's fine." It was Lelich's voice. Ichigo looked over to his right to see the 10th Division captain standing in the doorway. "Eli Lelich," Ichigo called out to him. "Oh, so you're back to normal now. How many fingers am I holding up?" Ichigo looked to the other side of the room to see Shinji sitting up in bed with a head bandage, sling, and arm cast. He was holding up 3 fingers with his bandaged arm. Ichigo gave him a glare like he wasn't in the mood for jokes. "What happened out there?" Ichigo turned to ask Lelich. "I was about to ask you that. You sort of lost it when you saw Talbumasuk deface your mother's grave. Replica or no replica, seeing that would set you off, but we didn't expect what happened at all." Lelich asked. "What do you mean?" Ichigo asked, but his mind suddenly flashed back to the sensation he felt how his mind had been clouded, his body hollow-fied. He saw the Zero, the Getchuga, all of it from his perspective. What was that?" "I just asked you that," Lelich asked. Ichigo put his palm over his left eye. I don't know. All I remember is getting really angry. There are some bits and pieces of what happened, but it's hard to remember." "Hirako, do you have any idea?" "What are you asking me for?" Shinji asked. "What do you mean, why am I asking you?" Ichigo asked, copying an attitude. "This has everything to do with my hollow powers, I'm sure of it." "What happened to me?" "Hell if I know, what happened to you never happened to any of us." "What happened to you was freaky," Shinji held up his hands. Ichigo just growled. "There's no need to get upset," Lelich said to Ichigo. "Easy for you to say, this isn't happening to you," Ichigo snapped. "I think what Lelich is trying to say is that he has a theory as to what happened," Shinji told him. Lelich nodded. "Well, I'm listening," Ichigo said, curling his legs up towards his chest. "This is just a theory for now," Lelich said, "but what if that overly powerful hollow form of yours was possibly a resurrection?" The idea stunned both Ichigo and Shinji. It was ludicrous. Of course, Ichigo was the only one to open his mouth. "That's crazy," Ichigo said, with a manic grin. "I can't have a resurrection. I'm not an Arrancar. I'm not a hollow." He leapt out of bed and pounded his left hand over his heart. "I'm a human. A Soul Reaper. A Vizard. There's no possible way I could have a resurrection. Right." He was getting all worked up and bent out of shape. Ichigo didn't even want to think that he was becoming excessively more like a hollow. "Wrong," Lelich said, "think about Mia, she has 2 Shikai and a resurrection. Mia's powers are borrowed though, aren't they? She took them from Kaien and Miyako, didn't she?" Ichigo asked. Lelich nodded. "That might be true, but the fact remains that she still has both, borrowed or not. So it's not impossible. With that being said, it's possible that you are the only existing Vizard with the capability of possessing a resurrection." "How's that possible?" Shinji asked. "Think about this for a minute," Lelich said, holding up a finger. "You and the others were already well-established Soul Reapers before you became Vizards." "Yeah, but so was I," Ichigo argued. "Correction, you were a substitute Soul Reaper with power you borrowed from Rukia. There's no doubt in my mind that, at that time, your large, unwieldy blade was Zanjitsu's sealed form, Lelouch said. But how can that be if I was borrowing Rukia's powers? Ichigo asked. Simple, because you always had the potential to become a Soul Reaper. Your dad is a Soul Reaper and, by birth, you are a noble, already giving you greater potential to have high Ryutsu. When Rukia awakened you, she simply awakened whatever power was buried deep down inside you. Zanpakuto are born with and die with the Soul Reaper they reside in. Zanjitsu has existed within you ever since you came out of Masaka's womb, Lelouch stated. However, that's only the simple part. This is where the theory gets complicated. I spoke with Urahara-san about how he restored your powers. Ichigo, before you became a Soul Reaper, you were turning into a hollow already. It was brief, but it happened. When you emerged from Urahara-san's shattered shaft, my theory is that, you didn't become a Soul Reaper with latent hollow powers. You were a hollow that, through sheer luck, managed to transform into a Soul Reaper instead of becoming one, therefore you inherited all of the latent powers of both Soul Reapers and hollows. In doing so it's possible that your hollow powers and your Zanpakuto spirit became one in the same. Ichigo gasped. Where is Zanjitsu? I am, Zanjitsu. It's a nice theory and all, but what does it mean? If that thing was Ichigo's resurrection, does that mean he can master it in time for Talbumasuke's return? Shinji asked. No, Lelouch said, this won't be like obtaining Shikai or Bankai. Ichigo may have found loopholes in how things worth to obtain both rather quickly and learn how to use them properly, but obtaining the name of his resurrection won't be the same. Wait. Couldn't I just talk to my inner hollow and obtain it by beating it out of him? Ichigo asked. Unlikely, if you tried that it could be suicide, as he'll probably use that form against you. I don't know how resurrections work. The Hogyaku probably gives it to the Arrancar it creates so that it's as instinctual as Sonito, but for a normal individual, a Soul Reaper like yourself, it won't be as easy. No, this is going to require careful study and observation. But what if what happens before happens again? Ichigo demanded to know. There's a chance that it will, but I can't see it happening again during the upcoming battle. We haven't repaired the damage to the fake Karakura town, there's no point. As far as I can conclude, you becoming enraged beyond reason while hollow fight is how it activates. In your mind, someone defacing your mother's grave is probably the worst sin you could possibly think of as a vendetta against you. In time the level of anger, or sin, required to set you off will lessen intensely, but it will only happen while you are hollow-fied, that I can promise you. When the time comes that any little taunt can set you into a flying rage and you don't even need to be hollow-fied for it to set you off, your form will begin to stabilize so that not even a high-level Hado can break you out of it. When that time comes you will have to fight to take control, Lelouch said. So you're saying I just have to wait for this thing to take over my body? That I have to gamble with my life? Ichigo was now shouting. He couldn't believe Lelouch was being so cold to him like this. I don't have any better solutions. Lelouch made clear, raising his voice. If I come up with something better I'll let you know, but for right now that is all I have. Understand? Ichigo calmed down and took a deep breath. Yeah, okay. Good, now get some rest. You might not be injured, but it'll take a while for your body to heal itself before you can go into battle again. Lelouch said and stood erect. By my estimate it will take Talbumasuke at least 1 month for him to analyze all of the battle data he obtained by fighting us. He'll come back at us with full force, assigning the Espada opponents according to their strengths and weaknesses. We have to be ready for that. At the same time I'm going to go over the data I have with Mayuri and Urahara-san and see what we can come up with. There's also this Segunda Etapa that I'm worried about. Alguna pata? Is that some kind of pasta? Ichigo said, mishearing Lelouch. Segunda Etapa. Lelouch repeated. Second stage. A few days before Christmas, Talbumasuke sent an Arrancar after us that had a second stage of release. He probably sent it as a test subject. I already calculated that, even if he did give Segunda Etapa to all of the Espada, that he wouldn't use it in the first battle. Talbumasuke was going to retreat whether you went berserk or not, Ichigo. There's no doubt in my mind that he's probably given the power to all of the Espada, but he probably instructed them not to use it to make us cautious, keep us on our toes. I have no doubt that, when he returns, that all of the Espada will immediately enter, or already be in their segunda etapa forms. He might also bring only just the Espada so that their Ryotsu doesn't burn out the captains. That being said, it would be foolish for us to allow anyone that's not a healer, visored, or a Bankai user to enter onto the battlefield, except for perhaps Tatsuki, Uryu, and Yasutura. They might still have some use. Lelouch about face. I'm going to go report this to the head captain. I will see you two later. Ichigo, try and get some rest. You'll be allowed to move around, but don't leave the division in a couple of days unless you want Ano Hinateko on your case. Listen to Lelouch, Ichigo, Shinji said. If you've ever wanted to listen to some advice, now would be the time to take it. Ichigo sighed and crawled back into bed, put his left knee up and put his hands behind his head. Yeah, whatever. Good, now that that's out of the way, what say we all head out to the Shiba Manor? Kyokaku's throwing a rather wild party and I figured you'd want to go, Lelouch said. I'm not really the party type, Ichigo lay back down. Orium and Tatsuki are already there, you know, Lelouch reminded him. The words wild party and Orium and Tatsuki only mixed in Ichigo's mind as something very bad was likely to happen. He got up out of bed and rubbed the back of his neck. He sighed, fine, I suppose I'll go for a little while. Great, follow me. Lelouch looked at Shinji, you coming? Yeah, I'm coming to a wild party with my Ingers. Shinji gave Lelouch a dull look. Lelouch cracked a grin and he and Ichigo headed for the Shiba Manor. The party was really wild and crazy when Ichigo and Lelouch stepped inside the manor. This is why I didn't want to come here, Ichigo said, covering his ears. What? Lelouch shouted, unable to hear Ichigo over the music. I said this is why I didn't want to come here. Ichigo shouted. Yeah, whatever, everyone's been saying what a hero you are for being the one to ultimately force Talbumasuk into a retreat. Try to enjoy yourself, Lelouch told him. Ichigo nodded and walked to a table, passing by the drink station to get some fruit punch. He sat down in a chair against the wall where the music wasn't so loud when Orium came bounding over to him. Ah, Ichigo, she waved as she jogged towards him and sat next to him. How are you feeling? She asked him. I'm better, thanks, he responded. Orium wrapped her arms around his and put her head against his shoulder. Good, she said calmly. Orium. Don't say anything, just let me hold on to you, knowing that you're okay, Orium said softly. Ichigo put his drink down and brought Orium into his embrace. I'm sorry, he told her, I must have really scared you, didn't I? I'm sorry. Ichigo. While the teen couple got nice and cozy, Yumi Chika was standing by the buffet table with a shot glass of sake watching Iba challenging Sentaro to a contest of who could eat the most barbecued ribs in 20 minutes. How barbaric, Yumi Chika scoffed, I'm surprised you're not over there, Ikeku. Yumi Chika looked over his shoulder, only see no one standing there. Oh, he looked back forward and looked down, right. He put the sake down on the table. Suddenly I'm not in such a party mood. He walked outside into the hedge garden up at the top level of the outside of the manor. He saw Shisato leaning forward the hedge garden looking up the half-moon. She was holding a half-drunken Shirley Temple in her right hand. I see I'm not the only one that misses him, Yumi Chika said as he leaned against the hedge maze like Shisato was. Shisato didn't have to look in Yumi Chika's direction to know who she was speaking to. She knew his voice by memory. He was a wonderful man. I really thought I had found the one, you know. She looked down over the hedge wall, but he's gone now and he's not coming back. Yumi Chika put a friendly hand on Shisato's shoulder. I'm right here if you need me, so long as you can be there when I need you. Ikeku was my best friend, you know. Thanks, Yumi Chika, Shisato said without turning to look at him. I just wish there was something I had to remember him by, you know. Sometimes the memories we have of each other are all we have to remember those we have lost, but if we find something when we're cleaning out his office. Yumi Chika noticed that Shisato was tearing up. Hey, are you okay? I'm sorry, was that too soon? Shisato nodded as she wiped her eyes and talked through tears. I've just been trying to think that he's not gone, that he's just hiding somewhere. She turned towards Yumi Chika, that we'll go back to the town in a month and he'll get all angry about leaving him behind, but, stuff like that. Yumi Chika gave her his shoulder to cry on again. Yeah, I know what you mean, stuff like that, you just want to believe that he's not really gone, but, admitting it is the first step towards healing. Shisato continued to cry. I don't understand. I never got like this when I thought Shinji died, but when I think about Ikeku, all I want to do is cry. Now Yumi Chika looked saddened as he pushed Shisato's sobbing, blonde head into his shoulder to offer her comfort, which was the only thing he could provide. He looked out at the moon. Nothing will ever be the same again, not even the simple things. Miles away, Tison was standing up on the hill where he had constructed Mariko's grave site. He built a grave for Hisagi as well. Heavy footsteps walked up behind him. I thought I might find you here. Seijin, Tison turned in his friend's direction, have your wounds healed. Anohana Teiko assures me I am going to be fine. My arm's been reconnected and my injury should scab over in a month. I'll be fit to fight in the coming battle, Komamura said. I see, Tison said and looked back at the grave. Is Hisagi? I know not what was done with his body, but his memory deserves a proper burial. Hisagi was a good soldier and a loyal one at that. I don't think anyone could ever replace him, Tison stated. Kaname, Seijin looked sympathetically at his friend. Tison looked up at the moon in the sky, though the light from it did not register in his mind. Lately I've been thinking that, the only reason I'm still here is because of you and Hisagi. What do you mean? Seijin asked. I became a soul reaper for the sake of vengeance and hatred, for revenge. My justice was only the blind lashing at an invisible foe, a foe that Lelouch helped me to metaphorically see. Aizen is dead, Talbumasuk has taken his place. I have you to help me, but, once Talbumasuk falls, my purpose, except to exist as a friend to you, is gone. Then, I will make sure to stay alive, Seijin stated. A pause passed between the two comrades before he spoke again. Kaname, I do not know what sort of evils Aizen had you commit, but you are still with us and I believe that that is enough for the Godai to recognize that you belong here. Perhaps you are right, but, what is a warrior without a purpose? Neliel called such people, beasts. Am I a beast, Seijin? Tison asked. You are no more bestial than I am, Seijin told him. Kaname, I believe that the path you walk is the path to atonement. If you want a purpose then you can devote the rest of your life to repenting for the sins you committed when you were still blind to the truth. Tison turned it sideways, looked in Seijin's direction and then looked out over the horizon. That, sounds like something I could do, Tison responded. It is something you can do, Seijin encouraged. Tison took a deep breath. Yes, perhaps you're right. Come, if you stay out of the ward for too long I'm sure Anohana Teiko will be furious with you. Yes you have a point. At the infirmary, yet another individual was having reflections. Shunsui sat in one of the Ikebana gardens with a cup of sake next to the small stream that ran through it. His hat was off and he was dressed in the garb of a patient of the care wards. He sipped it and frowned. It's bitter. I guess they're filled with my sorrows. Nanao-chan, I didn't mean for you to get hurt. What am I going to do? Yukitake had told Shunsui that he shouldn't blame himself for what happened to Nanao and that it wasn't his fault that she had died. Shunsui begged to differ. He felt that if he hadn't sheltered Nanao for so long she might have done a better job. He knew Lisa was inside and that's why he was outside. He couldn't face her, not like this. Lisa was like an older sister for Nanao. She'd give him hell for what happened and blame him for sure and this wasn't something he could just laugh off and act like nothing was wrong. The 8th Division captain hated war. He had a motto, it doesn't matter who wins in the end, the moment the fighting begins both sides are wrong. Nanao was innocent in all of this. He told her time and again that she should stay behind, but she insisted she be useful and Lelouch agreed with her eagerness. Did that mean he blamed Lelouch for Nanao's death? Of course not. Did he blame the Aaron car that killed her? No. Did he blame Rukia for not being able to help her? Even if he wanted to, her sister-in-law, Kyokaku, would surely give him hell. Shusnui could only find it in him to blame himself. I am a worthless man who's growing useless in his old age. He swallowed the rest of the sake. Ah, still bitter. Don't say that about yourself. You know it's not true, a voice said from behind him. Shunsui ignored his guest. He knew who it was without turning around. If you've come to give me hell, hurry up and get it over with. Lisa scowled and whacked Shunsui over the back of the head and then fixed her glasses. I'm going to give you hell, but not for Nanao's death. I'm going to give you hell for acting so pathetic. Shunsui looked up curiously at Lisa and she sat down next to him. I don't disagree that I am very upset at what happened to the girl I considered like a sister to me, but if I went blaming you as though she were your responsibility, then I would the last part of me that still clings to my days as your second. In actuality, the only person I can blame is myself. What, and you want me to yell at you? Now Shunsui could make jokes. It's not like that, Lisa said. If I hadn't been listening in on your meeting all those years ago, maybe I wouldn't have gotten wrapped up what happened. Former executive commander So iPhone got to stay by her idol's side, so why couldn't? She turned red and looked at Shunsui, who was smirking at her. Idol, huh? He scratched his stubble. That's not what I meant. Lisa put her arms up in protest and faced back forward, curling her knees up by her chest. I mean, I was Nanao's idol. Hey, come on now, there's no need to be shy, come on, we've been apart for nearly a century. Be a little more honest with yourself, Shunsui told her. Lisa just stuck her nose in the other direction. All right, I get it. I guess I'm as unpopular as ever, poor me, Shunsui said and poured another glass of sake. Want some? Sure, Lisa accepted the drink. I know how you hate to drink alone. You really shouldn't turn to the bottle for comfort all the time though. She sipped the sake and swallowed every last drop. She put the saucer down and stood up. Nanao's no longer around, so you need to start taking responsibility for yourself. I know you always functioned to the beat of your drum, knowing that I would, and after me Nanao, would pull you out of your own little universe, but you no longer have that luxury. Lisa picked up the bottle of Shunsui's sake. She threw it and Shunsui watched as the sake shattered on the other side of the stream. You need to start acting like a proper captain. Without someone dragging you around, you'll have to start acting less laid back. Shunsui lay down on the ground. You sure about that? Now that I know you're okay, I might just act up to force you to come all the way from the world of the living to give me a good scolding. Lisa responded only with words. You know I can't do that. I'm a Vizard, you're a Soul Reaper. Our groups will never see eye to eye. My days in the Godai are over. You're going to have to start getting used to doing everything for yourself. Yeah, Shunsui grunted as he got up off the ground. I guess I gotta start acting professional now. He took a deep breath. Tell me though, Lisa, what do you do when you take the training wheels off your bicycle when you've ridden them for so long? You keep getting up off the ground, no matter how many times you fall off, Lisa said. I was afraid you might say that, Shunsui sighed. So, what do you say we rekindle the old fire? He asked Lisa. This old man's branding iron isn't cooled off yet. Perhaps under normal circumstances, but with Anohanateiko breathing down our necks. Shunsui sucked in a breath like he had just dodged being kicked in the nuts. Oh, yeah, good thinking. Senpai would get really mad if we started doing that on her grounds. So then, my office sometime this month. Lisa winked at Shunsui. I'll think about it. She walked back inside. Shunsui smirked and watched her go back inside. I still got it. He looked back at the destroyed alcohol bottle. He reached into his kosid for his flask and dumped all of the fluid inside before drawing out his wakaizushi and slicing the flask in half. He put the sword away and looked up at the stars circling overhead. And I certainly won't be having any of that for a while. I'm gonna change my ways, Nanao. Shunsui grinned at the night sky. He tilted his head back down to look forward and began to head back inside. I'm just sorry it took this to make me do it. Hueco Mundo. In one of the training rooms. Neliel was practicing her blade work fiercely. She'd been at it ever since Talbumasuk dismissed the Espada. I will get stronger. She thought to herself. She kept her mind off Pesha and Dondakaka. Rage clouded her mind. She had been forced to retreat despite the fact that she could have fought back and won. As she continued to rampage about inside the empty room, a fist connected with her face. "Damn, didn't think you were that offbeat," a smug voice said to her. Neliel looked up from the ground to see Grimjo standing over her. "What the hell do you want?" "Hey, talking smack is my thing," Grimjo chuckled. "What crawled up your ass and suffocated?" Neliel turned her back on Grimjo. "You wouldn't understand." "Oh yeah, cause I totally didn't have my fraction killed too," Grimjo said to her. "Look at this place," he took note of all the damage, "it's like Yami went on a sugar rush. Destruction's my shtick." "Grimjo, shut up," Neliel scowled, tensely gripping her blade. "Or what, you going to attack me? In your state you wouldn't be able to lay a fucking finger on me," Grimjo boasted. "Don't tempt me." Neliel took several furious swings at Grimjo before the Sexta Espada kneed her in the gut and sent her tumbling along the ground. "Man, you've gotten more pathetic than I thought. Damn, Nell, you're weaker than an eggshell right now." Screeching, Neliel got up and charged forward, trying to punch Grimjo in the face, but he punched her down to the ground again. She growled like a wild animal. "Do you even know what you're acting like right now? I thought you said you were a warrior." "You look awful bestial to me," Grimjo laughed. He stopped laughing and used a bala on one of the ceiling lights. The fragments shattered and Grimjo picked one up as it fell. He could see his reflection a little in the fragment. At the very least he could see his eyes. He grabbed Neliel by the hair and smacked her head into the ground, and then he shoved the fragment in front of her eyes. "Look at yourself, tell me what you see." Neliel, still scowling, looked at the glossy fragment of the light bulb. She saw the eyes reflected back at her, and they were not the eyes of a warrior. She looked angry, enraged, lost, and savage. That can't be me, can it?" Neliel looked at her reflection. "I'm the Espada of Destruction. I deal with my problems the same day I deal with everything, but that's not you. You're not a war machine like I am," Grimjo told his friend. "Look at yourself, Nell. Look at what you've become." Neliel looked at herself in the light bulb fragment and tears formed in her eyes. "Take it away," she shut her eyes, "I don't want to look." Grimjo let go of Neliel and tossed the light bulb fragment aside. "I'm a monster," Neliel sobbed. "No, I'm a monster," Grimjo chuckled as he got to his feet. "What you are, is a mess." Neliel looked down at the ground and cried. Hate and anger, they had overtaken her. She had become the one thing she thought she had evolved past, but in reality she was just as much of a hollow as she always was. The realization hit her, and it hit her hard. "Wasn't it you who said to me that you wanted to see me survive this war with you?" Grimjo asked. Neliel gasped when she heard Grimjo say that. The blue-haired Arrancar hardly ever paid attention to anything. The fact that he even cared that she said that was remarkable. "You," Neliel pushed herself off the ground, "remember me saying that?" "Yeah, so what? I only said it cause I've been thinking it would be nice if we outlived that bastard Talbumasuk. Seriously, if the Soul Reapers do kill him, we should slip out the back door and do what the hell we want. I'll be king and you'll be queen," Grimjo grinned. "And when did the mighty Grimjo come up with this plan?" Neliel asked. Just something I pulled out of my ass. I sort of owe you for saving my ass against that gang of masked freaks when I was kicking Kurosaka's ass," Grimjo stated. He realized how strong they were in comparison to him after he fought Shinji. Grimjo was surprised when Neliel hugged him. "What's this for?" "For being a friend. Without Pesha and Dondakaka, you're all I have left," Neliel said to him. Grimjo sighed. "Oh please, enough with the sentimental crap." Neliel perked right up. "'Kay, what's say we go get something to eat then?" "Race, yeah. You're on." Grimjo and Neliel tore off through the hallways towards the cafeteria. In his own quarters, Talbumasuk shut off the monitor. He had been worried about Neliel's mental state and had been wondering how to fix it. He didn't expect that Grimjo would be the one to help her out of her issue. Of course, if the Espada thought he could outlive him, he had another thing coming. Still, at least Grimjo hadn't said he would help the Soul Reapers take him down. He sat down at his desk and began working out a battle plan for next time. As he did, though, Mia came up from behind him. She had been in his office for a while now, completely of her own accord, just biding her time. "Still working?" she said. he responded. Isn't there something else you'd rather do than plot? She asked. Not really. Talbumasuk really couldn't think of anything. Mia wrapped her arms around Talbumasuk's shoulders and lightly tickled his collar. Are you sure about that? She purred as she nuzzled the side of her head into Talbumasuk's neck. Talbumasuk saved his work, turned around, kissed Mia passionately as he pulled her towards him. He pressed his forehead to hers after they broke away. I suppose plotting can be put off for a little while. Mia licked her lips in anticipation, and the two went over to the giant bed in Talbumasuk's room to satisfy each other. Talbumasuk and Mia landed on the Overlord's bed and rolled over so that the Arrancar Lord was on top of her. He kissed her passionately and then traced his thumb and forefinger down the side of her neck and along her shoulder, causing Mia to shiver. He knew how to get her going. Mia looked forward to the days when she and Talbumasuk would fornicate. She lusted after him like she did no one else. She always felt satisfied after he took her. In 40 years, ever since she existed, she never felt ecstasy quite like whenever Talbumasuk took her. As her master undressed her, he brushed her hand down Mia's stomach and stroked his hand up her passage, earning a pleasured "oh" from the septima. He stuck 2 fingers in her and stopped shortly. Why did you stop? Mia asked him. You're a bit looser and wetter than usual. Is today? So what if I'm ovulating? That doesn't mean I want this any less, Mia told him. You really are a sexual fiend. Talbumasuk grinned and plunged himself inside her. Mia's erotic moaning combined with the pleasure Talbumasuk felt while doing her overrode any thought process in his mind during the course of the action and, at the end of it all, wound up releasing inside her. As the two came down from their high, Mia curled up with her lover. Master, she cooed, am I more to you than just a subordinate and a lover? That's a surprise to hear coming from you, Talbumasuk told her. I just want to be with you. I lust after, and I love you, Mia stroked Talbumasuk's chest. I know I am special to you because of how close I am to a soul reaper, but, am I more than that? I must know. With the Hogyaku, I can do almost anything. I would not have brought you back if I didn't care for you. I would have done something else. Talbumasuk stroked Mia's shiny, dark mauve locks. I've always thought you were beautiful, Mia. Master, Mia wormed her way further into Talbumasuk's embrace. Mia, Talbumasuk whispered her name as he held her. Yes, I will stay with my master. We will always be together. He can satisfy my desires. Mia smiled. It's ironic, I'm the espada of lust and yet, I think all I've ever wanted is to be loved. Thank you for loving me. Master. End of Chapter 82. Chapter 83, Wave of Nostalgia, enter Yumuro Hana. Lelich's Dream. Lelich's POV. I was running through a field. Why? I didn't know. I was just running. I was running in slow motion and uphill. As I reached the top, I saw someone faced away from me. When that person turned to look at me, I instantly recognized who it was. I could never mistake that pine green hair or those soft alluring red eyes. Why, Yuna? It was her. She was wearing her old captain's uniform. Hello Lelich, my darling. Yuna. I became excited and ran towards her. Yuna welcomed me with open arms. Yuna, you're okay? Of course I'm okay, she said, I love you. Oh Yuna, I missed you, I said, nuzzling my head into her bosom, arms wrapped around her, eyes closed, and a smile on my face. Lelich, I have to go now, Yuna said. Go, but we've just been reunited. I said warmly, still enjoying the sensation. I was until I felt something warm on my hands and a chill pass through me. I opened my eyes, blood was on my hands and I was no longer in a field. Around me was a dark forest of large black trees, the sun blotted out almost completely. Below me lay Yuna and she was bleeding uncontrollably and blood was pouring from her lip. Goodbye Lelich. No. Yuna. I won't let you die. I shouted. Yuna just smiled at me, closed her eyes and died. No. Yuna. Wake up. Wake up. I shook her body. Yuna, wake up. Yuna. I tensed up, gritting my teeth. No. Yuna. I bolted upright, panting. I became conscious of my surroundings. I was in the bedroom in my office. The soft chirp of birds alerted me to an awakened state. An ray of sunshine peeked in from the wooden blinds across my window. Only then did I realize that I had been dreaming. I put my right hand up over my face and clamped it. I sneered in disgust at the agony of my nightmare. It was only a dream. I calmed down and just pulled in my knees and hunched over them, feeling a little depressed. It's been nearly 71 years and Yuna's death still haunts me, bothers me, chains me down. She was the woman I think I only ever truly loved, well, at least since I had come to the Soul Society anyway. The feelings I have towards Nimue, Susanna, and Rangiku, they don't compare to the feelings I had for Yuna. In fact, I don't know if the feelings I had for Shirley compare to what it was I felt for Yuna. Come with me, Lelouch. Come, home. I went and looked out the sunny day and then turned away from the window. I spied my Haori in the corner, hanging on the coat rack. I bit my lower lip. It's no longer home without you. I thought to myself. Unlike Shirley, I would never know the full extent of my feelings for Yuna. The next time I met Shirley, she would remember me, but the next time I met Yuna, she wouldn't remember me at all. Why is it that the women I love the most are the ones that die? Maybe you're cursed, Iin Tamashi responded. I sighed. I suppose it's a fitting punishment. After all the sin I've committed, why should I be allowed true happiness? Gah. You sound so wangsty right now, it's not even funny. Iin Tamash said, disgusted. I was not about to get into an argument with her. I don't appreciate you making light of a serious subject. She didn't respond. I took a deep breath and walked into my office. No matter how many people tell me it wasn't my fault that Yuna died. No matter how many people tell me that Hashima was the one to blame, I blamed only myself for Yuna's death. I was arrogant, proud, my inherent invincibility and vision of the future made me believe, and so far nothing had come to contract it, that I would be a captain and I would slay my hollow self so that it could become me. I didn't realize that this would be the price to pay. If I had gotten help, Yuna would still be here with me. She would understand that my intervention had saved her life. Pride and revenge do nothing, except cause pointless death. Yuna may have disliked outside intervention, but at least she would be at my side. I took another deep breath as I sat down. There's no use dwelling on the past though. I thought, staring straight across the room. Yuna's gone. It's just a fact of life I'm going to have to live with. Still, the more I thought about, the more I just wanted to crumple up and die. Then don't think about it. I simply sighed in response, folded my arms onto my desk and put my head down on top of them. It's been a few days since we all came back from the fake Karakura town. Urahara's busy manipulating reality so that none of the citizens of Karakura town realize they were ever asleep and none of citizens outside it realize it's been gone for so long. I've been hard at work since then doing tactical work on our next battle, but I'm still waiting heavily on data that only Mayuri and Nimue can provide me. Captain. I heard Rangiku's voice before she suddenly poked her head into the room. Huh? Captain, are you all right? She seemed to notice the sorry state I was in. I was just doing some thinking, I responded. Oh? About what? Rangiku asked as she circled around behind my desk and stood next to me. I turned my head away from her to avoid being distracted as I spoke. I couldn't talk to her with her chest at eye level like that, not that she seemed to have done it on purpose, at least this time anyway. I was thinking about Yuna, I said solemnly. Oh, Rangiku said normally, which then changed to a sympathetic, oh, I see. I felt Rangiku push off the table. I turned my body towards her, resting one elbow on the table with my head in my hand. Rangiku was looking away from me with her left arm crossed over her body, grabbing the upper portion of her right arm. You still miss her, don't you? I do, I said with a straight face. I sighed and turned back forward, burying my face in my arms as I folded them on the desk. Yuna was everything to me while I was here in the 10th Division. She could always lift my spirits without even trying. I sat up and smiled through my depression. I never really appreciated her as well as I could have. Captain, do you want some time off? Rangiku asked, without sounding overly jubilant or that she was trying to give me pity. It sounded like an honest request. Huh? I looked at her. She smiled at me. With the battle coming up, rest and relaxation could do you some good. You take the day off. I'll take care of the paperwork for you, okay? Rangiku asked. She didn't seem like she wanted anything. Genuinely, I could tell when Rangiku was trying to bargain. From the look on her face, she just genuinely wanted to help me. Thanks, I said, getting up from my seat. I put a gratuitous hand on Rangiku's shoulder. I appreciate it. I made for the door. Ah, Lelouch. Rangiku called out to me. I turned to look at her. She seemed concerned about something. What is it? I asked, genuinely curious. She shook her head. It's nothing, never mind. I shrugged. Okay then, I left the room. I decided sometime in the Rokanga would be the best place to clear my head. I only went as far as Junranan. Of all the Rokanga sectors, it happened to be the nicest and well taken care of. If only the other 359 sectors of the Rokanga could be like this. I thought to myself. As I walked on, I began passing by the residential areas, seeing kids running around in different colored capes, pretending to be the phantoms. I really have made a difference. I thought to myself. It brought a smile to my face. Oh, do my eyes deceive me? Is that you, Lelouch-kun? A craggly elderly voice called out to me. I turned to see an old woman sitting in her lawn chair, knitting. She had grayed-out blue hair and bright blue eyes. She was wearing a sun hat with a white lotus flower in it. I looked puzzlingly at the old woman. I never forgot a face, or at least I tried not to. I squinted and suddenly the memory of an overly energetic, riot-celeste blue-haired girl came flooding back to my mind. The last I had seen this old woman was over 126 years ago at my academy entrance exam. Well, I smiled. How are you, Mindra? Oh, I'm fine. Had the longest, most normal life anyone could imagine. Look at you though. You haven't aged a single day, I don't think. You're as young, charming, and handsome as you were all those years ago, Mindra said with a smile, and now you're a captain too. My, oh my, the years seem to have just flown by, haven't they? I continued to smile. What have you been up to all this time? I asked. Oh, nothing as exciting as what you've probably been up to, I'm sure. Surely a captain such as yourself has better things to do than listen to an old woman's tale, Mindra said. I was about to respond and tell her I had plenty of time when the sound of feet crunching through grass and a call of Oba-chan alerted me. I turned to his left to see a girl, about no older than 15, come running up to my location. She was rather short, maybe about 2.5 inches taller than Rukia. She had long, pine green hair. She was wearing a sunflower yellow robe that was starting to fade, signaling that she'd only been in the Rokanga for not as long as many others. When she reached my location, she stopped and stared at me. She looked at me as if she were staring at an old friend she had long since forgotten. I looked into her eyes. They were redder than the ripest tomato. Yuna? I couldn't help but take note at the uncanny resemblance between the young girl before me and the woman I loved. Oba-chan, who is this? The girl asked innocently, tilting her head. Her voice was soft and pure, dainty. Her tone made her seem very formal and courtly. Ah, this is an old acquaintance of mine, Captain Lamperouge Lelouch. We met a long time ago when I first tried to become a Soul Reaper, Mindra responded. Lelouch-kun, this is Yumuro Hana. I've been taking care of her ever since she came here a few months ago. Hana curtsied to me. It's very nice to make your acquaintance, Lamperouge Teiko, she said. I gave a shallow bow to the point where it was more like a head nod. Yes, same to you, Hana-chan. This girl, she reminds me of Yuna. Her eyes, her hair, even her name. It's an obvious anagram. Mindra began coughing. Ah, Oba-chan, are you okay? Maybe you should rest inside. Hana rushed to her side. Mindra pulled out a cloth and coughed into it. No, I'm fine, my dear. Oh, please, don't trouble yourself on my account, I told her. The health of the citizens is very important. In that case, come inside and stay for tea, Hana requested. It's not every day I meet someone Oba-chan knows, especially a high-class Soul Reaper. Sure, why not? I decided. I had tea with Mindra and Hana while I listened to what Mindra had been up to for the longest time. Apparently she was once neighbors with Toshiro and Momo. Hana was like a regular fangirl towards Soul Reapers, unsurprising since she used to be one. I began to wonder if perhaps I should do something about that. Yumuro Hana, Homura Yuna, it couldn't be a coincidence. My visit ended when Mindra broke out into another coughing fit. She insisted I stay, but Hana insisted that Mindra get some rest and I go on my official business, not that she knew that I currently had time off. I thanked them for the tea and then went back to my office. Ranjika had taken all my paperwork, like she had promised, so with nothing better to do, I began pacing the floor. I wonder if I can reawaken her memories, I thought to myself. I can start working on formulas and equations and, I stopped my thought process and frowned. What's wrong? Iin Tamashi asked. I can't do it, I stated. Why not? You love her. Iin Tamashi told him. Don't you get it? This is exactly what my father did. I'm clinging to the past. If I turn Hana back into Yuna, who does that help accept me in my own confused love life? I won't do it. I looked down at the ground in despair. That's silly. You love her. Iin Tamashi told me. You wouldn't understand. This, if I cling to the past, how am I any better than my father? I wanted to know. Iin Tamashi materialized and put her hands on my shoulders. You are better than your father. What's wrong with doing something for someone you love? She's not Yuna anymore though, I looked to the side. She's Hana now, Yumuro Hana. It's not right of me to take the life she has for my own selfishness. And what about Yuna's promise to you? Iin Tamashi let go of me and folded her arms. Promise, to me? Third book on the left, third shelf, Iin Tamashi said, referring to my bookcase. I knew which book she was talking about, Yuna's diary, last page. I flipped to it and read the last words Yuna said to me. I will find you. I will find you, because, Lelouch, I love you. I shut the book. Don't you see? You're meant for each other, Iin Tamashi told me. People think you are. You mean thought we were, I corrected. I know what I said, Iin Tamashi folded her arms. I will never understand you, I told her. And that's just the way I like it, she winked. I had never been so inclined to hit a woman. I sighed and turned around. We were meant for each other, I said, putting the book back on my shelf, and I screwed it up. Lelouch, what do you think will happen if you reawaken Yuna's memories, besides falling in love with you again? Iin Tamashi asked me. I shrugged. She pointed to her head and glared at me. Think. What could possibly happen? Iin Tamashi wouldn't have been arguing if she didn't have a point to make. She wanted me to realize something that I was not seeing. Okay, what could happen if Yuna did, theoretically, come back full swing? My mind drifted towards the Espada on Talbumasuk's group, Mia. She had absorbed Miyako's soul and obtained her memories and her experiences. If Hana and Yuna were the same soul, then I knew what Iin Tamashi was getting at. If I bring Yuna back, she could use her Zanpakuto again. Which means you get the Godai an extra fighter for round 2, Iin Tamashi told me. I suppose I do at that, I said. I sighed. Still, how am I supposed to do that though? I'm not the inventor around here and Urahara-san would question my motives, not to mention he's way too busy for me to bother right now anyway. Well, there's always. Yeah, I took in a deep breath, I guess I'm going to have to make a deal with the devil. 12th Division. I felt awkward coming here. The last time I had had a private chat with Mayuri, he didn't yet know about what I did to him, but I was forced to spill my guts, everything, to the captains when I was being locked up. There was a chance Mayuri would refuse to help me out. Still, I was out of options. I walked promptly up to the desk where Nimia was. Oh, Lelouch-sama, I was not expecting you, she said, looking up at me. I need to see your captain, it's important, I said. Mayuri-sama is very busy, Nimia bowed to me from her seat. She sat upright. But since it's you, Lelouch-sama, I will check to make sure. Nimia pressed a buzzer. Mayuri-sama. Confound it. What is it? It would be impossible for me to mistake that ticked-off voice. Lelouch-sama is here, he says he would like to speak with you, Nimue stated. What about? Doesn't he know I'm very busy? Mayuri snapped, he should. After all, we've worked tirelessly trying to get all of this data done for him. I stepped over to the intercom. I've come to beseech your wisdom, Captain. I have some inquiries that not even the great Urahara Kisuk can answer, O bearer of brilliance. Nimue was trying not to laugh at my obvious flattery and the gigantic smirk on my face that I was just sucking up to Mayuri to get him to see me. I could hear Iin Tamashi snickering too. I see, I suppose I have a few minutes. You know where my office is, so surely you don't need directions. Hurry up before I change my mind, Nimue ended the intercom session. Well, that was easier than expected, I chuckled. You are very good at manipulating people, Lelouch-sama. Nimue complimented. It's what I do, I beamed and walked to Mayuri's office. So what are these questions you have? Hurry it up, I haven't got all day. Mayuri asked the minute I walked into his office. Mayuri, how would you describe the way a soul's memory is wiped clean when it is reincarnated? Is it like formatting a hard drive wiping, or is it like taking a cloth and wiping down a table wiping, leaving residue of one's former life? I inquired. If it was the former, then everything fell apart, but if it was the latter, then I could proceed with my plans. What you say is not something I ever gave consideration to, Mayuri said. However, he rose up from his desk and walked in front of it. If I were to speak as a scientist, I would have to. It's neither really. It's more like a hard drive that has been booted with a new operating system. All of the data from the previous system is still intact, but it's inaccessible, except, perhaps through dreams. This is how many explain a case of déjà vu on experiences that they've had only in the realm of their subconscious. And would you say that, with your brilliant mind, you could build a machine that could reawaken these hidden memories? I asked. What kind of thoughtless question is that? I can create almost anything. It's experimenting that's the problem, all partly in thanks to you. However, the problem here is not a level of can, it's a want, and I don't see the interest in exploring hidden memories, I'm afraid, Mayuri sighed as he began to go through a file cabinet. Are you sure? You never know when hidden memories might be a useful thing to explore. I mean, let's say, theoretically, the reincarnation of a former captain was found. His or her hidden memories reawakened could present another captain-level soul reaper without the memories of their current life damaged and their old life reawakened, I responded. And the chances of that happening are quite slim. Most souls that come here from the world of the living, unless they are particularly willful souls, do not even become the living beings in the Rukanga or event Hisiritii, Mayuri stated. Yes, I know. The truly weak make up the billions upon billions of bits of Reishi that compose the soul society, and their reincarnation cycle is over. If there was one fact I hated about the afterlife, that was it. The truly weak became particles of Reishi inside the soul society, or Hueco Mundo. It's how a balance between the souls born in the soul society and the living souls that died is maintained. It's disgusting, but that's nothing that has been done to the weak by the strong, that's just the weak being too weak to help themselves. We are unable to help souls beyond granting them passage to the next life. We do not know if that means that they will never wake up, trapped forever as bits of Reishi, their consciousness silenced. Still, I needed this to work. I would have to appeal to the pride Mayuri had in his brain. You're saying you don't want to, but perhaps you, deep down, know that this is something beyond your ability, I said slyly. You slanderous little worm, Mayuri grinned at his teeth. I looked at my nails, pulling the "your anger bores me" act. If you're that confident, then why don't you prove me wrong? I asked. There's no guarantee he'll say yes, I thought as I glanced towards Mayuri, but this tactic is worth a shot. I will prove you wrong. I will have a hidden memory restoration contraption built within 70 hours. I am the greatest inventor in all of the Soul Society. Just who the devil do you think I am? Mayuri hyperventilated. I get it, I said, pushing my hands forward and back. Well, if that's how you feel, then get to work. I'll be back in 3 days, I said, holding up 3 fingers. Good luck, Kuratsuka Teiko. My, an honorific, you haven't addressed me in such a way in a long time. I walked right out the door without saying anything. It was a slip of the tongue. I scowled. I will never forgive what you did to Nemu. Ever. The next day, I picked up my mail that morning only to realize I had a summons letter mixed amongst it to the Central 46. What's this about? I wondered. I made my way to the chambers and stepped up to the front door. I'm expected, I announced. I waited a few more minutes and the camera hanging over the door glanced down at me. I held up the letter. It identified me in the letter with a scanning laser. Individual identified, Captain of Squad 10, Lamperouge Lelich. You are 0.88773 minutes early. Please step inside. The door opened and I walked down the hall and into council with the Central 46. What's this about? I asked, looking around the room. Captain Kuratsuki has filed for grounds to build a brain-analyzing machine with hopes of reawakening hidden memories. Upon reading the file, we came to a consensus that the device could potentially be dangerous, but also noticed that, in the report, you were the one that suggested he build it. What is your aim? They asked. Humph, I stuck up my nose. You never seemed to care before. Watch your tone, a member told me. See things from our point of view, Captain. Experiments are one thing, but you are building a device. There are procedures that we must step in to prevent unauthorized use of things that could be used as a weapon against the Soul Society. If this machine can reawaken memories, then it can also destroy them. We must look at all of this machine's capabilities. What is your purpose for using it? I was asked. Tell them the truth. Iin Tamashi told me. It might get you somewhere. I was already planning on it, I said. Hear me, O members of Central 46. My intentions are noble and just. There is a girl living out in Rukonga by the name of Yumuro Hana. I have reasonable cause to believe she is the reincarnation of former captain of Squad 10 Homura Yuna. If my work is successful, I can work to tip the scale in favor of the Godai when Talbumasuk next strikes. If Yuna and Hana are the same person, then Hana will become Yuna and her Shikai and her Bankai available to her. All of her memories, all of her experiences, she will be with us once again. I announced. The room was silent except for the murmurs of the Central 46 chattering back and forth to each other. I hated it. It was like waiting for a jury to pass a verdict on a case of capital punishment. Something had to be done about Central 46, they had way too much power over us captains and the rest of the Soul Reapers. They also didn't fight, and the only ones who should judge those that kill are the ones willing to be killed. The chattering stopped. The 6 elder members of the Central 46 gave me their decision. Lamperouge Teiko, if what you say is true, and we have no evidence to point to otherwise, we believe we can permit the use of this machine to reawaken Homura Yuna. However, we would like proof of your failure or success once your task is completed, and we also would like to obtain possession of this machine and lock it away so that it cannot be used with ill intent. If you can accept these conditions, we will grant you allowance to use this machine as you have described it. The Central 46 told me. So let it be decreed, so let it be done, I declared, flinging my arm out at my side, causing my haori to flap. And Captain, do try to keep the theatrics down next time you visit. We find your overdramatization rather annoying, I was told. I twitched. Annoying. Ha ha ha. Iceburn. Iin Tamashi cackled. I growled at her. I then gathered myself and made my way out of the Central 46 chambers. The next evening, I was working on paperwork, which I hate. When I led the Black Knights there was never any paperwork. Everyone just moved because I said to. The same went for the Phantoms. Still, I knew it had to get done, but right now anything would be a welcome distraction. As if a deity had heard my thoughts, a knock came to my door. Yes. I responded, eagerly. Sir, it's me, may I come in? It was Rainjiku. It's unlocked, I said. Rainjiku opened the door. What is it? I asked. Sir, there's a little girl at the western gate crying, asking to see you. Jidanbo and the patrol are doing the best they can to keep her calm, but she's called for you by name. Word came to me from lower down, so I rose to my feet. I'll take care of it, I said, please come with me. Yes sir, Rainjiku responded. Rainjiku and I went out into Rukanga. It was pouring rain out. The men directed me to where they had been keeping the little girl who turned out to be Yumuro Hana. Hana-chan, I recognized her. Lamperouge Teiko, Hana ran forward and clung to my Shiakusho. The other Soul Reapers prepared to wrench her off him, but I raised my hand in protest. Stop, I know this girl, be at ease, I told the soldiers, allow me to be alone with this one for a while. I can calm her. If you need anything sir, just holler, Rainjiku said, I'll wait outside. I nodded. The building Hana and I were in was a Soul Reaper Patrol Reserve building. Since we were in a village close to the gate it was normally unoccupied. I began to prepare tea. Hana's clothes were sopping wet so I gave her a white shitagai and a thick, woolen blanket to warm her up. I set the teacup down as the clock on the wall ticked away and the candle light burned. So, you wanna tell me what happened? I asked. Oba-chan's dead, Hana squeaked, she passed away in her sleep. I could never survive on my own. Oba-chan has always taken care of me. How long? I wanted to know. Not very long, I've only been here for maybe a few months, Hana said clutching the blanket tighter to her. I didn't know where else to go, and since you're a captain I figured. I smiled. It's okay. You were lost and you thought I could help you, I understand. I closed my eyes and took in a deep breath. Hana-chan, have you ever thought of becoming a Soul Reaper? I haven't really thought about it. I've always been comfortable with my life, but now. You know, your grandmother wanted to become a Soul Reaper Hana-chan, but she lacked the ability. You have an ample amount of Ryotsu to start basic training. I'm a captain so I can enlist you as a student, you can take the exam in a couple of weeks when the year starts, I told her, if this experiment fails, at least she should become her own person, I thought. What will I do until then? Hana asked. You'd stay on campus obviously. Once you're enlisted, unless you're proven unqualified, we don't kick you out. And for those who have nowhere to go, we've enlisted policies in place to accommodate the less fortunate to special shelters until they obtain the necessary skills to try again or can move out of the shelter and live on their own, Lelich stated. What about tonight though? I have nowhere to sleep, no food to eat, nothing. Tears formed in Hana's eyes. You can stay here tonight. This is an unoccupied patrol hut. If you'd like, I'll stay here with you, just for tonight, I told her. You'd do that? Hana blinked out 2 tears, for me. I would, I said kindly, and so much more. Hana began to cry and then just lost it and sobbed into my chest. I soothed her and let her unload all of her tears. When she finally calmed down I told Rainjiku what was going on. Sir, are you sure about that? Rainjiku asked. What will people say? You make it sound like I'm going to be sleeping in the same bed as her. Besides, there's nothing wrong with showing compassion to a traumatized civilian. The girl lost her grandmother Rainjiku, have a little sympathy, I said sternly. Hey, I feel just as sorry for her as you do, Rainjiku snapped, don't act like I don't care. She calmed down and looked inside the door. Still, that poor girl, losing the only person she had to call family. Mindra lived for over a century and a quarter. Without Ryotsu or being a Soul Reaper, it was only a matter of time. She's one of the lucky ones to have lived for so long and to have lived her life to the fullest. Many civilians like her become food for hollows or are killed by their own kind for their property and possessions. Mindra was lucky to have survived for so long. Hana-chan was lucky to have her. I said. I suppose you have a point there, Rainjiku said. By the way Lelich, that girl, what's her name? Yumuro Hana, I answered. I see. Rainjiku said. She reminds you a lot of Yuna, doesn't she? I asked. Rainjiku started to say. It's okay, I feel it too. I looked at Hana and sighed, who was sitting there all by her lonesome self. That evening I stayed with Hana to soothe her and keep her calm. I sat on the other side of the room, not needing to sleep, watching her, making sure she was safe. Do you really believe that girl is Homura Yuna's reincarnation? Iin Tamashi asked. I do, I responded. How can you be so sure? It's not like you to make a decision like that without actual fact, Iin Tamashi told me. How could I possibly prove or disprove this until I try my experiment? I asked back. Iin Tamashi sighed, point taken. Still, even if she is, and your experiment fails, don't go treating her like she is. If Yumuro Hana stays Yumuro Hana, then that is who she is now. She's not your former captain anymore, Lelouch, she's a new person now, with new memories. She has no memory of any of what you two went through together. I know that, you don't need to tell me, I growled, frustrated. TCH, keep your temper in check, Iin Tamashi said. I continued to watch Hana as she lay across the room, rolled up in a blanket. I watched her begin to shiver and then move. It was possible she was having a nightmare. I strode across the room and simply stroked the side of Hana's cheek with the back of my hand. The simple action seemed to calm her and chase away the nightmare. I knew it worked because of all the times I had done that for Nunnally. The simple external gesture of a person you trusted was enough to calm one's soul. I was surprised when Hana reached out and grabbed my fingers, pulling me down. I did not resist and lay on the floor next to her. Instinctively Hana curled up her legs and wiggled herself in between my chin and lower body. I will take care of you, I thought to myself. Hana, no, Yuna, I will find a way for you to remember me, because just as you do to me, I love you too. End of Chapter 83. Chapter 84, Lamperouge Lelouch, Memories Reawakened. Lelouch's POV. I woke up the next morning, having not intended to fall asleep, with Hana still using me for security. It was as if I was a tree and she was a koala bear. She eventually did wake up, she let go of me, yawned and stretched. I got up to make it seem like nothing had happened. I didn't want to alarm her. Hana rubbed the sleep from her eye and looked at me. "Gee morning," she said kindly. "How are you feeling?" I asked her. Hana yawned again. "Better," she said and stretched. "I had a," she pushed her fingers together blushing, "rather interesting dream last night." "Oh really?" I asked, intrigued. Why yes that. Hana stopped blushing and looked down. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Oh Bachan's, really gone, isn't she?" "Did you think it was all a dream?" I asked. "Well, part of me wants it to be all a dream, but, part of me just wants it to be real." Hana looked at me, "Because of you." Me?" I asked, not understanding. Hana looked away from me again. Last night, my dream, I had a dream that we were dancing together. It was like I was your girlfriend," Hana said. "She likes you." I didn't think that needed to be stated given her past life. "Lamperouge Teiko, I have a feeling like we've met before," Hana said. "Perhaps we have," I said. Huh. Hana snapped her head towards me. "Hana-chan, I need to be somewhere. Will you stay here until I come back?" I asked. Yes," she nodded firmly. "Good, don't worry, I won't forget to come back. I might be gone the rest of the day, but I'll be back tomorrow, I promise," I told her. I walked outside. Ranjika was standing in the middle of the road, arms folded. "Were you here all last night?" I asked her. "Yes sir," she reported with a salute. "That's so unlike you. Are you feeling okay?" I asked her. "I thought you might need me in some form if you decided to leave. Besides," Ranjika looked to the side and grabbed her arm, "I care about Yuna too, you know." I smiled. "Good, then you can do me a favor and spend some quality time with her reincarnation." I began to walk towards the Siriti. I need to pay Mayuri a visit. I might not be back until tomorrow. Stay with Hana and you can be worryless until I come back. "Wah, but sir. You did me a favor with my paperwork, now I'm doing one for you," I told her as I continued to walk. "Just don't teach Hana-chan anything lewd," I declared and vanished with Shunpo. 12th Division. I stopped by to see Mayuri and see if he had completed the machine. He led me right to the lab he had built it. "There. You see. I told you I could do it." "Yes, but does it work?" I asked. "Why don't you test it and find out?" Mayuri asked. Good point, and who better of an initial test subject than myself? I said, and sat down in the chair hooked up to the machine and pulled down this helmet with all sorts of wires connected into it down onto my skull. A bunch of electrodes attached themselves to my head, and I looked onto a nearby monitor where my own memories and brain began appearing on screen like data files on a computer. There were so many different folders, my brain had so much stored on it. It was incredible to see just how much memory was on it. 144 years of memories, experiences, but the real trick would be finding the hidden folders and systems of a possible past life. First though, I figured it would be best to reawaken an old memory from so long ago, perhaps one from my infancy that I couldn't remember now, or perhaps I could bring an old memory to the surface. Using the navigation tool Mayuri had created, I found a file created on this exact day of the imperial calendar in my brain. I decided to open the file. My brain became stimulated by the electrodes as the memory was reawakened, and I watched it as if it was happening before me. Pendragon. I could see my old home through my own eyes from very low down along the walls. I was crawling on the ground when suddenly I was hoisted into the air. Aha! There you are. Did you think you could hide from me? It wasn't my mom's voice, and it sounded really young. It had to be one of my siblings, but which one? I was shocked when I was turned over and saw Cornelia holding me. Your mother was right. You are a little troublemaker, Lelich. I can't keep my eyes off of you for more than 2 seconds, can I? I could feel her cradling me in her arms. The sensation was warm. My older half-sister really cared about me. I heard crying, but it wasn't from me. Oh dear, seems Euphemia's woken up from her nap. Cornelia bounced me in her arms. I'll feed her, and then I'll see if the child genius of the family can learn how to walk yet. Her smile, it was so innocent and kind. I'd never seen that smile on my sister's face before. Soul Society. I stopped the reawakening and pressed my hand to my face. Cornelia cared about me, but why? Was it because I was my mother's son? But that smile, I'd never seen a smile like that on my sister's face before, not since I was banished anyway, and even then her smile was never that cheerful. Cornelia, what happened to you? I wondered. Are you all right? Mayuri asked. I designed this process to be rather painless. You might feel a neural shock or two when the memories are stimulated, but it won't exceed more than a few volts per second, though it tends to stop being noticeable once you're inside your memory. I'm fine. I said. Are there more memories like this? I wondered. Was I wrong? Did my family really care about me? I shook my head. No. If they really cared about me, then they would have defended me. I scowled, remembering the day I had talked rudely to my father and been cast out into Japan, on that day. I took a deep breath and did what I could to try and find a hidden folder or file. I was navigating for a few minutes before I found a hidden file. It was the first one I found, so regardless of what was in it, I was going to activate one memory from this file. If it worked, then I could just as easily find Yuna's file in Hannah's memory and reawaken her. Well, here goes nothing. I stimulated my brain with the sensation and was carried back to a vision of my past life. 1225 ATB, England. I was in a village where fire surrounded me from all sides. Buildings were burning, children were screaming, and people were crying. I could feel a book being carried in my hands. A long black cloak was draped over me. All of this destruction and chaos, I wondered if it was perhaps my doing. You there? Someone called out to me. My past self turned to see a knight up upon his horse. He was dressed in gold and white with his dark brown steed draped in similar colors. Foul warlock, this be thy last village, ye burn to the ground. The knight pointed his lance at me. My past life spoke. Lancelot, hast thou not learned thy lesson? Thou stands not a chance against the likes of me. Hast thou forgotten what I did to Gawain? 0. Lancelot identified my past self. No, Lord Vance of the House of Deacon, why art thou doing this? Merlin was going to take thee as his apprentice. His Majesty was going to grant thee with more land as a successful magician of the kingdom. Why did thou betray us? Why did thou dabble in the dark arts and kill Princess Rosa of the House of Lebraltar? Thou could never understand me, Lancelot, who spends his days groveling at his Majesty's feet whilst the kingdom's magistrates grow more corrupt every day. I will not sit by and watch it happen. I will tear Arthur's kingdom to the ground and build a new empire in its place, one that does not scorn the peasant, perhaps one that does not have peasants, Zero declared. And how does setting fire to the local villages make thee into a hero? Thou art a murderer, Zero, a cold-blooded murderer. Lancelot shouted at him. Think of thy sister. She has been driven mad because of thy actions. Guinevere will understand in time, but the future of the world requires a just hand that only I can provide. Zero extended his arm out to Lancelot. Galahad, thou once believed in my visions. Join me and victory can be ours. Lancelot caused his horse to rear back and whinny before its front feet stomped on the ground and it snorted. Thou shalt not ever call me that again. I am Lancelot now. I will never join thou in thy plot. I shall not make treason with the empire. So thou says whilst thou makes bedfellows with his majesty's woman, my sister no less, Zero declared, growing angry. It be not the same. I have feelings for Queen Guinevere that are far more than what his majesty feels. Lancelot twirled his lance. Enough talk though, if thou wilt not atone for thy actions, thou shalt be cut down by me. I accept thy challenge. The prize for the winner is the ability to draw breath. Now come. Things were fuzzy for a moment. It seemed as if there were gaps in this memory, or perhaps the data was stored on another file. When I regained sight, the battle was over. It appeared that my past self had lost. Lancelot was holding me in his arms as I died. His face was what Suzaku may have been like had he been born bright and neon. Standing away from him was a woman that looked like a much older Nunnally. She appeared to be in tears. Lancelot, Zero turned to look at him. If this be my end, then thou must do me one last favor. I shall do thy will thusly if it be within reason, old friend, Lancelot told him. Protect Guinevere, be her knight. If thou wilt not follow my ways, then thou should watch his majesty and find the truth. Do not trust Arthur. Brother. Guinevere bounded towards Zero and knelt down at his side. If this is what Nunnally was going to look like when she got older, she'd be pleased with her image now that she could see. Zero laughed. Goodbye, sister. I am sorry. Zero's eyes closed and I could no longer see. The last thing I could hear was Guinevere. Vance. Vaad. Present day. The memory ended. So much for history being accurate. I thought to myself. According to history and folklore, Guthegrim was the name of Guinevere's brother and he had kidnapped her and he was never a warlock. There were so many things of that memory where the facts did not check against history, but since this was my memory it was obvious which was real and which was fake. So, how was it? Mayuri asked. I think this should work, I said. I shall fetch Hannah tomorrow. Right now, I have some things I wish to think upon. Humph, very well. I shall see you tomorrow then, Mayuri said to me. I excused myself and went to my office. I went to my adjoining bedroom and lay down on my bed with my hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling. Iin Tamashi materialized. Something the matter, Lelich? She asked. I was just thinking about that first memory I restored. I sat up. Iin Tamashi, you were born when I was born as a part of my soul. Does that mean there are hidden memories that you can recover or memories of mine that you remember that I cannot recall? Iin Tamashi shook her head. Just as with the fact that you've been temporarily displaced, I am the active part of your soul given form. In other words, I cannot access memories you do not remember or recall events you do not recall. I am only a part of your soul. Your whole soul remembers those memories, but your active soul does not. When a Zanpakuto is first created, it is created using part of the Soul Reaper's active soul along with the complement of that active soul to create the inner soul. This is how the name of the Zanpakuto is obtained and the Shikai is formed around it. Is that how it works? I asked. Yes, Iin Tamashi nodded. However, because we are set to act as a complement to the active soul, usually there is conflict within the soul and us, making progress to learn our name and ability difficult. She folded her arms. If, inside, the Soul Reaper can accept their flaws, the part of them reflected in their Zanpakuto, or whatever part of them their Zanpakuto wants them to embrace or perhaps fight against, a bond of trust is formed and Shikai can be achieved. What about Bankai? I asked. Iin Tamashi took in a deep breath. Bankai is formed not by the soul, but by the destiny the soul reaper sets out for his or herself. Many soul reapers cannot obtain Bankai either because their destiny has not been realized or because their destiny does not require them to obtain it. Destiny not only sets the bar for one's potential, but it also sets the bar for how that potential is formed. Your Bankai was formed for the destiny to crush the strong and assist the weak. Your Seishin no Kaimusho is a perfect example of that. A person whose self-sworn destiny is to surpass others results most often in a Zanpakuto with a lot of power, like Abarai Renji's Hyo Zabumaru. For people like Ichigo, who choose for their destiny to be to protect those they care about, putting themselves at risk to help others creates the strongest type of Bankai possible. When is a destiny determined? I asked. It varies from Soul Reaper to Soul Reaper, that's why it takes 10 years to learn it. That's why Urahara Kisuke's device is so risky. If you force Bankai onto yourself before destiny is realized, it could be catastrophic. Ichigo was lucky he had chosen his destiny long ago and focused it when Zanjutsu trained him, Iin Tamashi said. It's possible that the catastrophe is still in there though, given what we've seen, I said. That may very well be, Iin Tamashi agreed. So, if Bankais are determined by destiny, does that mean that destiny shapes how strong one becomes through Bankai is also determined by that training? I asked. Iin Tamashi nodded. Why aren't we taught this? I exasperated. Iin Tamashi shrugged. You're the first to ask his or her Zanpakuto, I suppose. And since you're so interested, let me give you a crash course. To obtain Bankai, one must follow one of the 11 types of destiny. The weakest type of destiny is called the loyalist. A loyalist type of destiny usually is not enough on its own for one to obtain Bankai. There are rare instances where this has happened, or could happen. I don't intend to speak for others, but it generally doesn't happen. Bankais formed with a loyalist destiny tend to show a trait of some kind in tribute to whom the user is loyal to. The stronger the loyalty is in comparison to the makeup of destiny, the greater the trait. The second weakest and the lowest form of destiny to require Bankai, by itself, is called the overtaker destiny. An overtaker is the destiny of someone who seeks to surpass another individual, but rather than making them better than their desired target, it focuses the Bankai and converts it into pure power. Sounds like Renji, I said. Iin Tamashi tried not to laugh and continued. The next step above that is called the vengeful. The destiny's meaning is self-explanatory, but the effect it has on the Bankai makes it so that the Bankai is focused on killing potential. That's certainly interesting, I said, thinking to myself. When Jin was on his way to becoming a captain, his only interest was taking down Aizen. His Bankai has to be 100% vengeful, no doubt about it. Above that is called the Punisher. This type of destiny is undertaken by anyone who seeks to use their power simply to punish those who they would deem to be evil. Iin Tamashi explained. Their Bankai focuses around ways to be cruel to their opponents or make them suffer. Sounds like Tyson and me, I said. That is indeed true, but only in part, Iin Tamashi stated and continued. Above that is specialization destiny. These Bankai are what many of the Overtaker are set to be like, but since it is a selfless destiny, unlike the Overtaker, the Bankai focuses itself around the particular trait the individual wishes to be the best at. I'd make a bet that Stefan definitely has that kind of Bankai, I stated. Probably, Iin Tamashi figured. Above that is the Savior destiny. Some Bankais are born on the basis that one person wishes to bring aid or peace to a person or group of people. It goes without saying that Kaion's desire to save Miyako caused his Bankai to undertake, in part, this form of destiny. The Savior destiny, unlike the Vengeful destiny, is selfless and focuses on bestowing upon power enough to rescue or save that group of people, but this destiny is not as widely recognized or very powerful since it requires something to have already happened first. Above the Savior is the honor-bound. This destiny is interesting because it requires the individual to fight for a set code of laws and morals. They are, as should be obvious, bound by honor. Honor-bound Bankai have no set form, but they have no parameters set to them either, and that's what makes them powerful. Then that would be Byakuya in a nutshell, I smirked. Yup, Iin Tamashi confirmed. The fourth highest, and the destiny undertaken by the head captain is called the leader destiny. Self-explanatory really. Leadership Bankais are powerful. They are as strong as the group the leader wishes to lead. For head captain Yamamoto it was the other Godei captains, for you it was anyone who would follow because, at the time, that was your mentality when you took the first step towards Bankai training. Wait, people can have multiple destinies? I asked. Of course, that's how many Bankais become extremely powerful, or are diminished. For example, a loyalist trait can boost, but at the same time hurt an honor-bound Bankai since the destinies fuse to make you honor-bound centered on the person you are loyal to, Iin Tamashi explained. Now the top 3 strongest destinies all affect the individual the same way. They all set the individual to gain the power they desire to fulfill their destiny. How much power is given is based on the selflessness of the destiny. The least selfless and the only one of the 3 that is largely used a rather skewed way is the visionary, belonging to someone who wants to bring about change for, what they believe, is the good of those around them. You and Aizen both undertook this type of destiny, but Aizen took it without any of destinies mingled within it. That sounds like Aizen, I said with slight agitation, just hearing that man's name made my blood boil. The second highest type of Bankai is called the Atoner. It is the second most powerful because it is bestowed upon one who has been through a tragic experience, but rather than undertake the path of vengeance or punishment they try to atone for what they've done. It is a very selfless destiny and that is why it is the second strongest. Your student, Hisuna, underwent this kind of destiny when she first started her Bankai training, but halfway through it she added shades of the strongest type of destiny, the same destiny that Kurosaki Ichigo undertakes, the Protector. The Protector is the most powerful destiny because it is the least selfish. Think about it, the individual in question is sticking his or her neck out for others so that they don't have to. The stronger those they want to protect are, and the more people there are that they want to protect, the stronger the potential is for that Bankai. That would explain why Ichigo is so powerful, I said, rubbing my chin, but he and Toshiro have the same destiny. You forget that both of them have merely obtained Bankai. They have not yet fully mastered its capabilities, but between the two of them I would say Ichigo is the more powerful. Iin Tamashi said. And why is that? I asked. Because, like Urahara, Ichigo underwent a force of destiny. He did not wait for his destiny to develop, he took the only destiny he knew and crammed it into the force of destiny, and we've already discussed the catastrophic results that come about from that, Iin Tamashi stated. Why doesn't a force of destiny diminish power though? I wanted to know. Because it incorporates the strengths of all 11 destinies without receiving any of their drawbacks. A destiny cannot be determined, so the individual is taking parts of all 11 destinies simultaneously, and that is why it increases power rather than decreases, Iin Tamashi stated. Well, it makes as much sense as anything else in this crazy universe, I stated. Iin Tamashi snickered. One thing bothers me though, I said, putting my hand up to my chin. Why is Talbumasuk so strong? If everything you've said now is true, at the time of developing his Bankai I can only peg him as undertaking a combination of the loyalist and the vengeful. Yet his Bankai is rather interesting. If I had to guess I'd say that he might have undergone part of the Atoner path as well, Iin Tamashi stated. Atoner? Talbumasuk? Is your head on straight? I asked. Iin Tamashi twisted her head side to side with her hands. I think so. That was a rhetorical question, I said with a sullen glance. Oh, lighten up, Iin Tamashi told me and then explained about Talbumasuk. If we assume that Talbumasuk started his training shortly after you destroyed the Tremere family, then perhaps he wished for power so that he could make up for not being able to protect his family. True, he may not give much about them now, but Bankai is determined as to why you desire power. Whether you use it in that fashion or not is up to you once it is in your grasp. In your case, your Bankai was formed from no less than 5 different destinies, the vengeful over Yuna and Mari's deaths, the leader as Zero, the visionary to create a peaceful world for the Soul Society, the atoner for your mistakes of the past, and the punisher for your strong sense of justice. That is why your Bankai is just a mass of different, dark abilities with no real theme to it. That's why your Bankai is so adaptive as well. Well, you've certainly given me a lot to think about. I responded, lying back down on the bed, and went back to thinking about Cornelia and how she had been so kind to me when I was little. Iin Tamashi, do you think I made the right decision in evading capture in Saitama that day? What do you mean? She asked me. If Cornelia really did care about me the way she did, would she have killed me if she captured me, or would she have protected me instead? That day in Saitama, when I had been betrayed by everyone and left at Cornelia's mercy, I wasn't dressed as Zero. Would she have been happy to see me? You're asking the wrong person, Lelich. I can't see into other realities. Iin Tamashi said. You're not very good at this consoling thing. I said. Nope. She responded honestly. I sighed and turned over on my side. I think I'll nap. Have a pleasant dream. Iin Tamashi told me and dematerialized. I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep. End of Chapter 84. Chapter 85, The Return of Yuna Homura. The next day. Lelich's POV. I returned to where Hana and Ranjika were out in Rukanga. I was now going to take Hana to the 12th Division and try and return her back to being Yuna. I was doing this for the Soul Society. If Yuna came back, then we were that much more protected against Talbumasuk's forces. Everything that came after that was a bonus. That's what I had to keep telling myself as I headed for the gate. Lelich, relax. What you're doing is what Rukia did to Ichigo, you're changing her destiny. In the end, there's nothing wrong with that, Vance. Okay, the last part wasn't necessary. I think it's a cool name, Vance. Are you going to keep doing that? What's the matter, Vance? Do you want me to stop, Vance? Never mind, I sighed. Hana was so happy to see me when I arrived. She hugged me as if I were an older brother figure or something. Ah, Lamperouge Teiko. Thanks for watching her Ranjiku, I told her. No problem, Captain, anytime, she smiled. Hana-chan, I glanced down at her, I want you to come with me somewhere. Where are we going? Hana asked me. We're going to the 12th Division, I told her, more specifically to the Department of Research and Development. Will you be with me? Hana's hand slipped into mine. Of course, I told her. I glanced back at Ranjiku as the two of us walked forward. All your paperwork from yesterday is on your desk. You just have sign off on it. Understood, Ranjiku said. She left using Shunpo. I walked with Hana all the way to the 12th Division. I introduced her to Nimue as I reached the front desk. Lelich, is this the girl? Nimue asked. I had told her about Hana on my last visit here. Ah, yes, Hana-chan, this is Nimue. Nimue, this is Hana-chan. I introduced. She does look a lot like her, Nimue said, staring at Hana. Huh? Who do I look like? Hana asked. The first Soul Reaper I ever fell in love with. I told her as I turned to the side with a smile on my face. Now come on, I have something to show you. Okay, bye Nimue-san, she waved at Nimue. I'm starting to hope if she does become Yuna that this childish personality will vanish. Too perky for you? Excessively so. I led Hana to the room where Mayuri had built the Neural Reawakener as he had labeled it. What is this? Hana asked, in awe. It's called the Neural Reawakener. It stimulates and reawakens old memories that we might have forgotten or can no longer remember, I told her. I walked over to the apparatus controls and booted up the machine. I then turned around to face Hana with a serious look on my face. Hana-chan, I took 2 steps forward, I'm going to try something called recommissioning you. If this works, you're going to help me protect the Soul Society. Recommission? Hana asked. Does this have something to do with who I remind you of? It has everything to do with who you remind me of. If you're not her, then you're not her, but if you are, I swear to you that nothing bad will happen to you, I promised her. Okay, Hana nodded. I think Oba-chan would want me to help you in any way I could. Very good then go ahead and sit in the chair there. I gestured to the reclining chair with the helmet hanging over it. I strapped the sci-fi looking helmet to Hana's head and turned back towards the machine. Just sit tight. You might feel some slight shock, but I promise you that's all you will feel, I assured her. Okay, Hana responded. She sat quietly while I downloaded her memories onto the file in front of me. She only had 3 visible folders, Her Life Alive, Her Life in Soul Society and Her Life as a Plus, but I wasn't here for any of those files. A woman, even if they're a girl, is entitled to their privacy. I did a scan for hidden files and folders and I found one and it couldn't have been marked clearer, Homura Yuna. It is her. Joy was welling up inside me. All I had to do was open all of the files within this folder and Yuna would return to me. My hand hovered over the folder and I was about to open it to view all of the files, but I stopped. Why are you hesitating? Click it. It can't be that easy. I said. What do you mean, can't be that easy? Click it, damn you. Well, this is usually the part where fate conspires against me to make life harder and throw me into a depression or force me to rethink my strategy. Geez, and I thought I was the savvy one. Is it really this easy? I asked. Maybe fate is cutting you a break this time. Or maybe you'll open the folder and it's empty or damaged. I will hit you if that's the case. How? I'm inside your head. Inner world. Good point. I took a deep breath. I clicked open the folder. It wasn't empty. I highlighted all of the files, right-clicked and selected the option, Activate All. A window popped up. Warning. Opening this many files at once could result in unforeseen side effects that may include seizures, unconsciousness, and a loss of a sense of self. To prevent possible damage to the optic lobe, this interface suggests creating a temporary stimulus. It gave me two options, create temporary stimulus or ignore. And there we have it. Having a risk involved certainly made things more normal. I never was one to roll dice very often, but this was a gamble I absolutely had to make. I'm sorry, Hannah. I booted up the machine and a bolt of electricity ran down through the helmet and into Hannah's brain. I looked at her. She was vibrating slightly as her crimson eyes dulled. She was reliving every memory in that folder. I'd never prayed in my life before, but now, for the first time, I had to put my success in the hands of fate. I clasped my hands together. Please be all right. Yuna, come back to me. I kept my eyes closed. I started to feel Hannah's almost insignificant Ryotsu rise steadily. It was growing and it showed no signs of stopping. I opened my eyes. A glow had overtaken Hannah and her body was maturing and a kosid was forming over the shitagi I gave her and Hakama over the undergarments she was wearing. It's working, Yuna. My expression was probably never so happy and childlike. A loud whir could be heard as Yuna continued to be restored. Her Zanpakuto appeared. It's working. It's working. Suddenly steam blew out from the helmet and parts of it shattered and Hannah, or it could be Yuna now, slumped forward and put her hand to her eye, grunting as if in pain. Damn it, you said that wouldn't hurt, Hannah/Yuna said. Her voice was on par with Yuna's though, but it sounded a bit hoarse. Her body had matured to how Yuna looked right before she died, 25. How do you feel? I asked. Gimme a minute, she said. She blinked and I could see her bright red irises. I remember it all. Mari-sama, Hashima, Hashima. I'm supposed to be dead. Where? She looked around. This is the research department. So are you Yuna or Hannah? I asked. Hannah, that's my current life, but, no, not any longer. Yuna turned her legs to the side and stood up. I have been reawakened. There was something wrong. Yuna's eyes seemed fierce. I wondered if this was perhaps a side effect, but her eyes suddenly softened and she looked at me. I told you that I would find you again, but instead, you found me. Yuna smiled at me. Thank you, Lelouch. It was official. Only Yuna would be so informal. Are you really all back? I asked. It will take a while for my memories to sort themselves out. I'm a little off my usual self, so I apologize. It's just agitation from my brain feeling like a hollow is gnawing on it, but I really am back. Yuna told me. I feel weak. Yuna dropped to her knees. I kept her from falling. Perhaps I should get you into bed, I told her. Why yes, that would be best, Yuna responded. I carried Yuna down the stairs piggyback style as Yuna drifted off into a deep slumber. I simply smiled and winked at Nemu. She smiled back in recognition of what I was trying to tell her. I got out the door just as I heard a shout out. What in blue blazes happened in here? Guess Mayuri found the damage to the machine, I grinned. I brought Yuna to my office and let her lay down on the couch and let her sleep. She was out for only a few hours when she finally woke up. I was at my desk. Lelich. That's my desk. She trotted over to me. Oh, wait. Lelich, you succeeded me. I smirked and looked at Yuna. We're finally reunited after all this time, and that's the first thing you notice. You haven't changed a bit. Now this is more like the Yuna I used to know. She pushed me in the arm. Yuna put her hand on her head and extended her ring and pinky to her forehead and looked up and to the side. So much has happened since I've been gone. I feel like I must have missed so much, especially if you're my successor. I'll fill you in on the details. I promised her as I smiled. However, I stood up. There's something I want to do first. What's that? Yuna asked me. I pulled Yuna to me, holding her. To welcome you back and to tell you that I feel the same way about you that you feel about me. Eli Lelich, I could hear the shock in Yuna's voice. I didn't realize it until after you died, and I didn't realize how much I meant to you, but I stopped looking over Yuna's shoulder and stared straight into her eyes. I love you, Yuna. Lelich, she blinked at me. I made out with her. I loved her. I missed her so much. We broke away and Yuna nuzzled into my embrace. Don't let this moment end. Postpone it for as long as you can. I will, Yuna, I will. I let her out of my embrace and stared at her. I wanted to do what we should have done decades ago, but something was stopping me. An image of Nemea flashed through my mind. I let go of Yuna. Lelich, what's wrong? Yuna asked me. I can't, I said, that's not fair to Nemea. Oh, Yuna put her hand on her arm, I see. The clock ticked by for a few seconds before she broke the silence. Things have really changed since I last saw you, haven't they? Yeah, I said. Yuna let out a deep sigh and looked at me. Well, I've got all the time in the world to hear about it. She sat down on the couch and I nodded slightly on a reflex and sat down in the comfortable chair across from it. Why don't you bring me up to speed? Okay, I said. I told Yuna everything that had happened to me after she died, the changes to the Godai, the phantoms, Ichigo, the death of Aizen, my incarceration, the war with Talbumasuk, the casualties we suffered. I left out my past to her. I didn't like too many people knowing about it. The captains all promised me they would keep quiet. I'm not even sure if Byakuya told Hisuna. She's entitled since she's a captain now, and one of my closest friends, but even so. Wow, I missed a lot, Yuna said, looking at her hands as she had them crossed over her lap, twiddling her thumbs. It's been a wild ride, I said, and I stood up. While we can't be as intimate as both of us would like, I crossed over to Yuna and gave her a hug. I'm glad you're here to share it with me. Yuna stood up and returned the favor. Me too, Lelich, me too. I took Yuna with me, as prescribed by the Central 46, to their chambers. They requested Yuna show proof of who she was to prove that I wasn't trying to pull a fast one. When Yuna released Yogo Kaikai though, they were convinced. They also asked where the Neural Reawakener was, and I told them that it was damaged, so that if someone should go and get it, that it should be Anohana Teiko, since Mayuri would want it repaired before turning it over, but I believed that the Central 46 would rather have it damaged and only Anohana Teiko would be efficient enough to get it from Mayuri without a fight. The Central 46, surprisingly, agreed with me. Now that that's settled, one of the members said, what squad will she be in, Captain Lamperouge? She of course was referring to Yuna. Squad? I asked, confused. Captain Lamperouge, surely you never intended to let Homura Yuna wander free. If she's going to be of use, she must be reinstated back into the Godai, I was told. But she's a Bankai user, there are no captain positions available, I said. There are 2 vice captain positions open, which will have to suffice. If you can't make the decision, then have a talk with the captains in a meeting. We will not object to wherever she is placed so long as she is put somewhere. I sighed in understanding and went to Yamamoto's office to ask for a captain's meeting to be held, saying that such a thing was a decree of the Central 46. The captains were put in assembly within 20 minutes. It was a big shock to everyone to see Yuna alive, the ones that knew her. I explained and credited Mayuri for his help how her being alive was possible. After the shock, Byakuya and Hisuna both were happy to see Yuna. They knew her from when they were much younger. Tsun apologized to her, saying how he was sorry for causing Yuna so much grief and told her that he wished I had gotten to him sooner. If you're looking for forgiveness, I cannot show any to you now. If you want it, prove it by atoning on the battlefield, she told him. I smirked. Yuna hadn't changed a bit. Yukatake Teiko, Kiraku Teiko, and Anohana Teiko of course were very happy to see Yuna alive and healthy since they had known her ever since she became a vice captain. The meeting was put underway. All the captains agreed that, since there were no captain's positions open, that Yuna should be assigned a vice captain's position. I still thought it was unfair. I'd sooner step down as captain to give the position back to Yuna, but Yamamoto Suteiko wouldn't have it, saying that I had become a household name. Well, the only ones with an open position are Kaname and me, and since those two seem to be a little bit on bad terms, I'll gladly watch over Yuna-chan if no one has a problem with it, Kiraku Teiko proposed. All of us agreed, mostly just so we could get this over with. Before he dismissed us, Yamamoto asked me, since we were already in assembly, if I had anything to report on the tactical front. Well, I said, I believe that Talbumasuk will send only the Espada after us in the next battle and have them all use Segunda Etapa right at the start. Therefore, to be effective and to keep our losses minimum, I believe that only Bankai users, the Vizards, and Kurosaki Ichigo's Nakama, barring Orium in case Talbumasuk can trap her again, should join the battle. Just so we're clear, how strong do you think these Segunda Etapas are? Yamamoto Suteiko asked me. I couldn't say, I responded. I see, then until our next regularly scheduled meeting, you are all dismissed. Yamamoto Suteiko thundered. We exited out of the captain's hall. Yuna and I parted ways so she could be instated with Nanao-san's old position. I trudged back to my office and sat down in my chair, thinking. Things were becoming very difficult for me in my love life. I loved Yuna, but I also really cared about Nimue. I broke up with her once and I remember how traumatized she was when I did that. I won't do it again, but for Yuna it sort of felt like I was kicking her where it hurt. She and I were reunited only to find that we couldn't be together as we both desired. I sighed and leaned back. Iin Tamashi materialized. So, debating on polygamy? She asked with a smirk. I glared. Oh, feisty, she chuckled, you know, if you're having an issue, there are ways. I've heard things. Where and how? I asked. Oh, here and there, she waved her hand. She was always so vague. I just sighed with a growl. Bottom shelf, book all the way on the right, she quipped. Curious, I went for the book she mentioned. It a thick book with red leather bindings with the title inscribed with gold lettering, Soul Society Nobility. Iin Tamashi almost never steered me wrong. Perhaps about 5% of the time she proposed ideas just to screw with me, and this did not seem like one of those times. I had this book only because Yuna had it and she had it only because Mari had it. I looked at the table of contents and found an interesting chapter, How to Start a Noble House. I had always thought that the Soul Society simply ran itself using pre-existing families that came from the world of the living, but then again it only made sense that noble houses had to start somewhere. I sat at my desk and read through the chapter, seeing what the qualifications were. After 40 minutes of non-stop reading I understood the context. To apply for a noble house there were a few simple qualifications. For starters, the founder of the house had to be a Soul Reaper with Captain Class Ryotsu. This only made sense since almost all noble houses were known for having high-level Ryotsu. Secondly, the founder must have served with the Godei for at least a century. That was another thing I could check off. Thirdly, and this was an enactment that was not always in the manuscript, a starting house must have itself affiliated and serve underneath another more prominent noble house, including one of the great noble houses. Fourth, a starting house must contain, to have its foundation created, up to 7 servants and at least 4 members, not including the founder of the clan, to begin. Finally, the house must have its foundation approved by 7 other noble houses. I qualified for qualifications 1 and 2, but not yet for 3, 4 and 5. However, I took a look through the book of how to become a member of a clan, and apparently, depending on the clan's standing, the head of the house could have as many betrothed as decreed by the founder of the house. "You're welcome," Iin Tamashi said, and then dematerialized. I leaned back in my chair and put my palm to my forehead, smiling like a goblin. All the years I spent despising nobility, and yet it's my only option if I want to be able to solve this mess. And, so long as I'm a noble and act within faith of the Godai, the Central 46 cannot touch me. I sat up straight. Then again, perhaps this is my chance to prove that nobility has another definition that many tend to forget. I got out of my chair and began filling out the proper paperwork for application. It took me 5 days to get everything together. The Lamperouge clan, or as an alternative I had it decreed to be called the House of Lamperouge, was founded using a land grant offered up by the Kukaki clan and a financial grant from the Shiba clan. The house would be declared to stand as a harbinger of justice and a safe haven for the weak and needy. My land grant was small from Byakuya, but I managed to get some support from the Kazumioji house as well. After declaring my relations to the Phantoms, saying how the House of Lamperouge was now the operations and support system of the Phantoms, now known as Seoul Society's greatest black ops outside the Onmitsukido, since they were not of the Godai's jurisdiction. 25 years ago I led the Phantoms in a movement against the Kazumioji clan. I got a tip-off from Hisuna about how Byakuya held his suspicions about suspicious activity within the house itself, but could not confirm a thing as an officer of the Godai and a house head, since law prevented him from using his knowledge of both positions interchangeably to take them down. I had established the Phantoms as all-seeing and all-knowing, so that's probably why Byakuya didn't suspect Hisuna had anything to do with things when we raided the Kazumioji clan and I held its treacherous advisor, Kyunghwa Gyokaku, at sword point and, with geese, got him to talk. I then had the place trashed and anyone loyal to Kyunghwa was cut down. Whether they died or not depended on who was their attacker. I traumatized Kyunghwa himself and left him a babbling idiot when Stefan, Kendra, and the Onmitsukido finally found him. I also left a trail as bright and colorful as our uniforms to the Bakuto. Princess Kazumioji Rurakiyo, of course, knew nothing about the Bakuto, and the house was allowed to remain standing. At the same time we found that her ailing father, Kazumioji Jugen, was being poisoned so slowly and discreetly by Kyunghwa. Anohana managed to develop an antidote. The clan's most prominent guards, 7th seat of Squad 5, Kenzaki Ryasei, and 7th seat of Squad 7, Inkogawa Rusaburo, claimed they were in my debt. So, when I approached Jugen, Rurakiyo, Rusaburo, and Ryasei as an advocate of Zero, and showed proof by a pendant, from which a silver geese symbol hung, the same symbol, which I had embroidered onto the back of my cape after the first few years of the Phantoms, of course they were willing to help craft the house and all of its furnishings. The clan helped give me a foundation and set up the entire facilities for my house, or rather promised to do so. The House of Lamperouge could not be approved or seen as a true noble house until I obtained approval from 7 different noble houses and had 4 other individuals join me. It was rather simple to obtain signatures. I obtained 5 rather easily from Byakuya, Yukatake Teiko, Kiraku Teiko, Jugen and Kyan. Hisuna and Kyokaku, with their connections, got me signatures from a lower noble house of each of the houses they were a part of. With the signatures together, all I needed was some members. Word, of course, spread quickly across the Godai about my actions. I had an idea of who would help me found the house, and as expected both Nemu and Susanna jumped at the chance when they heard about it. Ryu volunteered to sign on as a house guard, saying that he enjoyed working at my side. I happily obliged. Naomi and Shisato also volunteered to sign on as guards. With 3 guards, technically counting towards the 7 servant count, and 2 members, only requiring 2 more to begin, it looked like things were going to come together. Currently I was walking through the construction area as members of the Shiba and Kazumioji clans worked to put their backs into setting the mansion up according to my specific requests, which included not only the essentials, like bedrooms, bathrooms, a dining hall, a kitchen, and several recreation rooms, but also a shelter for the less fortunate, an underground operations room for the Phantoms, and, just because I could get it, a human-sized chess set. Obsessive much? Shut up. As I left the construction site I found Yuna waiting outside the gates. "Oh, hey," I said, as I saw her standing there. "Been busy I see," she said. Yeah," I rubbed the back of my neck. Is this all part of some scheme of yours? She asked, sort of snippily. Well, sort of, but it's not any manipulative or dark scheme, it's something personal, I said. Oh really? Yuna folded her arms. It's so, we could be together, I told her. Yuna seemed caught off guard by my statement. I reached into my Kosid for a handbook of rules I had written for the house to follow. Article 3, Section 2, Paragraph 4, the head of the house is entitled to as many marriages as he or she sees fit so long as there is consent from the party being married into the family and the marriage is not constructed in such a way that grants the head of the house excessive benefits by the joining. I snapped the book shut. In layman's terms, I'm allowed to marry so long as I care for each and every person I am betrothed to. That includes you, I told Yuna. You did all of this, Yuna was touched as tears welled into her eyes, for me. Of course, I told her, I love you, remember? Lelich, Yuna trotted towards me and grappled her arms around me. I held her. We'll always be together, Yuna, I told her, this time I'll make sure not to lose you. Lelich, she said my name again. Hey. Lamperouge-sama, we need your help over here. Someone called out to me. Sounds like your presence is required, Yuna said, leaving my embrace. Yeah, I nodded and headed to go. Lelich, Yuna called out to me again. Yeah, I turned to look at her. Don't ever change, she smiled at me and vanished from the scene with Shunpo. I continued to help those around me create my refuge while at the same time I thought about who I would possibly get as my fourth member. I couldn't ask Rangiku to join me, it would ruin the plans I had with Jin. Toshiro had taken himself off the grid to train and Momo was busy with paperwork while her captain worked himself to exhaustion to prepare for the upcoming battle. After an honest day's worth of work, I sat in my office, still without an idea of who to bring in as part of my house. I was going to oversee construction and do what I could to help the house's completion. I prided myself as a man with the people's best interests in mind, and by all I held sacred I would make sure to keep that image intact. As I sat around, thinking, there was a knock on my door. Come in, I said, expecting Rangiku, but to my surprise it was Isane that walked in. Oh, Isane, what can I do for you? I asked. I was rather informal with those lower in rank to me unless I had a high level of respect for them, it's just how I was. She walked in nervously and stood in front of the back of the couch. I heard that you're starting a clan. Oh, it came to your attention, did it? I asked with a friendly smile. Come to sign up as a guard like Naomi, Ryu, and Shisato have? I asked. Actually, I heard you were trying to find another person to get the clan off the ground, she said. Isane's nervousness combined with the topic seemed rather peculiar. I had an inkling of where this conversation was going to head, but I kept pressing forward. Oh, and where did you hear that? I asked, acting like I was trying to keep that a secret. From Nimue-san, Isane replied. She showed me the handbook you were working on today as the Soul Reaper Women's Association meeting. I see, I said with a grin, and why the sudden interest? Yeah, this is heading exactly where I thought it would. Could I join you? Isane blurted out. Her face was entirely red. Sure, I said without hesitating. I understand if you, what? Isane looked at me for a moment. It was like the gears in her head jammed momentarily before starting again. I can. Why not? I asked, we're close friends, it's not a big jump. I told her, which was true. I mean, you have been taking care of me every time I wound up in the 4th Division's care ward. You don't think I suspected your feelings towards me? Besides the time when we met and the time of which I first obtained Bankai, Isane had been my personal nurse several times during the 15 years of which I was on the Phantoms. It was a good cover-up. With her looking after me, it prevented others from seeing my injuries in case someone had the inkling that I had an injury exactly where Zero had been injured before. It only took 5 times before I caught on that Isane's readiness to see to my injuries was more than just practicality or friendship. Give credit where credit is due, Lelich. I would have figured it out even without your help. Quiet. Thank you, Lelich Teiko, Isane flushed. There's no need to address me so formally, I smiled at her, especially if we're going to be living together. Isaine blushed harder and tapped her fingers together. She sheepishly looked to the side. Since, WELLB you know, could we, I found it cute that she was so embarrassed about this. That was Isaine for you though. She could bandage up a patient with his skin ripped down several layers in 5 different places, but do so much as asking her to loosen the folds on her shiakusho and she turned 15 shades of red. Well, I said, rising to my feet, I do have some work to do before I turn in for the night, but, I smiled at Isaine, I can take a 30-minute break or so. Isaine and I went into my bedroom adjoined to my office. I locked the door and then turned to look at her. Isaine was as red as anyone could have expected. I kissed her, which she moaned all throughout. I held her hand and pressed my forehead against hers. Don't worry, I told her, I'll be gentle. I grabbed remote from the nearby windowsill and turned on some sensual music. I whirled Isaine around and she and I flopped down onto my bed as I loomed over her. I pushed her shiakusho off her shoulders. Isaine looked at me with a nervous, flushed expression. Having second thoughts? I asked with concern. And no, but, Isaine looked to the side, I've never done this before. Wow, you're second virgin. Lucky you. A little privacy please. You know you're not exactly secluded even if I'm not talking to you. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. I looked back at Isaine's nervous expression. It's okay, I told her, just relax, I'll take care of everything. I kissed her again. When I finally undressed her, Isaine said to me, I can hardly believe this is really happening. I've had fantasies, but. Well, you let me know if I live up to your expectations, I said and licked the side of her neck. Isaine moaned so high-pitched. Somehow I suspected that was a turn-on action for her. I fondled her and felt her up, she was practically gushing with fluid. I see you're really looking forward to this. Stop teasing me, Isaine breathed, I want to feel it. Okay, I told her and entered into her, turning the shy 4th Division Fukotaiko into a real woman. Isaine was rather loud in comparison to the others. I started to wonder if anyone in the 4th Division could concentrate with the volume and pitch she moaned at any time she fantasized. Isaine didn't stay after things ended. She, like myself, still had work to do, but she told me before she left that she was looking forward to the big day when the house was founded. Ironically, none of my future wives seemed to care that they were sharing me. I always thought things would turn into one big cat fight. Fate was really cutting me a break lately. The next day, while I was taking a lunch break during all the construction, Yuna came by to see me again. Oh, hey, I said and held up the spicy and teriyaki chicken bento I was eating. Want some? No thanks, not hungry, Yuna said and sat down next to me, I just wanted to see you. Are you sure that's a good idea? Kiraku Teiko tends to push everything onto his second, from what I've heard anyway, I said. You know I expected that, but he's been acting really different from how I remember. You said Naneo died, right? Maybe her death made him realize he needs to act more captain-like, Yuna said. That would certainly help matters, I said, taking another piece of chicken with my chopsticks and eating it. How long do you think this construction will go on for? Yuna asked. Well, I don't expect things will be finished until after the war is over, and even then I'd probably still put off the wedding till after Talbumasuk was dead. I looked down at the ground with a smile. After so many years of pushing people away, I'm finally going to let myself become vulnerable. I took a brief pause. It's weird. Why would you push anyone away? Being alone is the worst thing you can do to yourself. That's part of the reason why I came back. Yuna put her head on my shoulder. I had you. Even without Mari-sama, you always to brighten up my day. I was never alone as long as I had you. I pulled Yuna to me again. It was so hard being without you. I think I know how it must have felt. I felt the same when Mari-sama died. It felt like someone had just gouged out your heart, split it in half, and magically it still beat when it was placed back inside your chest. But it's okay now, Lelich, I'm here now. It's okay, Yuna told me. Yuna and I switched positions so that I was now the one leaning on her. I was so heartbroken when I lost you. I never thought I could move on, but somehow I held on to the belief that we could one day meet again, because you promised me. And here we are, Yuna replied. We both sat up and stared at each other. Lelich, will you take me? Yuna asked me. I want to be with you, body and soul. It's all I've been thinking about since yesterday, since our encounter yesterday. Could we? She asked. I kissed her. Come to my office tonight, I told her, I'll see you then. Yuna arrived in my office a few hours before midnight. No words were needed when we entered my room. I loomed over Yuna just as I had with Isane last night. This was it, this was a moment I thought I had missed so many years ago, but now, finally the two of us could join. Are you certain about this? I asked Yuna. You read my diary, you know I am, Yuna responded. I simply smiled and slid my hand up the mattress and up Yuna's elbow before clasping her hand in mine and sweetly kissing her again. I took Yuna as she desired. During the rush, she was the best experience I ever had. It had to be because of how I felt about her. I didn't understand though why my feelings were stronger for Yuna than anyone else though. For all things considered, I should have felt just as strongly towards Nimue. However, after the moment was over and I lay there in bed with Yuna, I knew what it was. There was more protective instinct and companionship between Nimue and me than there was love. Still, Yuna came onto me just like Susanna did, so why did I feel stronger towards her than I did Susanna in that respect? What was different about Yuna that, even when she was alive, though he didn't realize it till after she had died and confirmed it now, I liked so much? The answer eventually came to me. Rangiku, Nimue, and Susanna idolized me, perhaps from the very start. However, while Yuna did like me, she never once let me supersede her authority, ever. I remembered it clearly, while in 10th Division, Yuna never hesitated to crack the whip if I was slacking. Susanna and Nimue had let me get away with things because of their devotion to me. True, even in the Phantoms, Rangiku had voiced her disapproval, but then there were the times that I wanted to tear my hair out because of her frustrating actions. Yuna never elicited that reaction from me though. We completed each other and had a special chemistry with one another, but even so, I cared about everyone around me. It's strange how I've gone from celibate when I was alive, out of necessity of course, to suddenly deciding to marry 4 different women, but you know, between the two, I like this situation much more and I look forward to the day when Nunnally, Yuffie, Shirley, and Colin CC, if someone ever does fulfill her contract, and everyone else that felt strongly towards me would stand at my side underneath me or alongside me. I will revolutionize the Soul Society and I will do it with all of the support I have from everyone around me, but first Talbumasuk must fall. He is in the way of what I must do and the Central 46, something needs to be done about them too. As my thoughts became less and less coherent, I lay down on my back and cuddled Yuna to me and fell asleep, waiting for dawn to come. End of chapter 85. Check the description for the links to the author.